Welcome to the Galen Trombley Show. Be sure to subscribe, review, and share the episode. You can follow me on social media at Galen Trombley. I hope you enjoy the show.
Greetings. Please hold for a very important message. Light speed sequence initiated. How may I help you?
Bonjour.
Security breach.
The truth shall set you free. Awesome. It's a miracle.
Stabilizing. 3, 2, 1. Mission complete.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
All right, folks, welcome. This is episode, I always write this down, episode 261 of the Galen Trombley Show. My guest today is Stephen Frederick, and I feel like I've seen him on, I think, mostly LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I feel like you're on LinkedIn a lot. I know your son, which I don't think I really put the connection with until recently. Makes sense, though. And absolutely love your son, love his wife, great people. But I think you mentioned now we're bringing on the more seasoned veterans here.
The old guys.
I'm not going to use old guys.
The old guy committee.
The seasoned veterans. But Steve, in the 10 minutes I've chatted with you before this, I think we're going to have a good time here today. So
let's let it flow.
So for people that do not know you, give us a little background, who you are.
Well, Steve Frederick. I grew up in West Shazy. I'm a proud farm boy. Went to Beekmantown High School. Got out of barely passed high school, quite frankly, and which is not a lie. I applied to go to Plattsburgh State and rejected not once but twice. And the third time they're about to reject me, I actually went in person and groveled at their feet to let me in. And they took a chance on a first-generation farm kid to attend college and put me in this high-risk group that had to have weekly academic advisement and counseling. And you know what? Within a short semester, I was working in the admissions office and worked there for 3.5 years. And basically 30 years later, I have a 30-year career working in higher ed. So from a kid who barely passed high school and was turned away from college, I made the best of it.
How come? So you weren't good at school, which
terrible.
Which is, was that because lack of interest or lack of? I'm assuming interest.
Probably interest. I've got this really weird test phobia.
Okay.
I've never heard anybody who had this same test phobia. So when there's a test and they say, pick up your pencil and you got X amount of dollars, it's the starting line of the Indianapolis 500. I have got to be the first one done. I don't care what test it is. I don't care if I pass. I just got to be the first one done. So imagine like when I'm taking my SAT or ACTs, there's 300 kids in the room and they say, go. If someone's done before me, I'm done. I can't even read the next question. I'm done. Turn it in. Done. I mean, no one has.
Bobby, if you're not first, you're last.
How weird is that?
That's true.
It's true. I'm dead serious. I've got to be the first one done. So when I actually studied for it, took my notary license to be a notary,
which I've heard is a difficult test.
Yeah. So people sign up for these classes and you take 6 months worth of classes. The day of the exam, you got 2 hours to do the exam. So when they said go, boy, it was the starting line of the Indianapolis. I was done in 20 minutes on a 2-hour exam. And I turned it in. He goes, what's the matter? I said, I'm done. He goes, you can't be done. I said, I'm done. Don't you want to go back and check it? Nope, I'm done. And I passed, thankfully. But it's the weirdest thing in the world.
I want to come back to that. I want to unpackage that in a sec. So actually, let's unpackage it.
Well, you're going to have a blast.
Let me unpackage that because I think it's going to go
the psychology of.
But I took like any kid, you grew up with standardized tests.
Yep.
I was always one in my mind. I never really worried how long it took. I would say if you had a percentile kind of chart, meaning you were the first percentile, I'm going to say the quickest, and 100 was the ones that stayed there and listen, we're running out of time.
Right.
I would probably be in that 80 range.
Right towards the end. You took full advantage of your time.
Yeah. I when I left, it might have been 10 to 20% of the kids left taking the test. That was always me.
Yeah.
I would always go through the test and I would try to answer everything. If I couldn't answer it, it was kind of like a little bit of a stump, I would move on.
Yeah.
And my goal was go through all of it.
Get the easy ones done.
Yeah, go back, and then the ones that I didn't know, then it became kind of like a problem. When you're solving a crossword, you kind of go to one, then you go back to the next one and back. So I kind of did that. And then eventually I got to the point, especially if it was multiple choice, you can pretty much always get down to one.
You
or two.
narrow it down.
So that's a coin flip. So I'm like, you know what? Go with your gut. What was your first instinct? And that's usually always how it went. But I always thought the Steve Fredericks of the room that were running out and like, I'm like, there's no way they took
Yeah,
the time.
it didn't matter if
No way they cared.
It doesn't matter how long as the first.
And I don't, I don't want to belittle anybody, but I would say the people that did that and walked out were probably the same as what you just said, where like they didn't have the best grades.
Right, nobody asked me if I passed or failed or what my grade was. But
That's why I was always like,
I was done first.
Definitely don't care. And now looking at it, this is and actually this is going to be a great segue to something I want to ask later. But I want to jump. So you did that.
Yeah.
Weren't like you self-proclaimed, wasn't great at school, but then why the heck would you want to try and go to college? Knowing that, in my opinion, I went to college, but my thought process was I don't want to go to college. I'm only going because I'm 34 now. At the time, it was like that was like the next
thing to do. Yeah.
So I only really went. I applied to one school, which is Plattsburgh. I got into one school, which is Plattsburgh. I graduated as quick as possible. I never did anything on campus. And my whole thing with college is I didn't really have any like. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I'm like, I'm in college. I really don't know what I want to do in college. Got out of college, didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was in real estate at the time, but basically, long and short of that was, I just went because I thought I had to do it. So someone like you who didn't care to have great grades or whatever, maybe like you did, or whatever, decided to go to something that should be on paper something a little more tough.
Yeah.
And not only that, but you like got denied, which was the easy route, and you kept going back. So it's like a glutton for punishment.
Huh? Yeah.
So how did you go from high school, Steve, to?
I think how it boiled down, my guidance counselor at the time said, look, you got three choices. You can stay on the farm, you can join the military, or you can go to college. Now, the first two were not that appealing. And my only choice for college, it's Plattsburgh State. Now, I didn't even know Clinton Community College existed. I would have been a fantastic community college student, someone who needed, the additional help with their work to get their grades up, get their confidence level up. I would have been a perfect student to go to Clinton, but didn't even know it existed. So your option was get into Plattsburgh State. Well, I got my first rejection letter, and I got my second rejection letter, and I put it in the third time. I thought, well, before I wait to get the rejection letter, why don't I go make an appointment? And met the director of admissions at the time, Rich Higgins, dear friend of mine. We all know Rich.
Yep.
I guess he took pity on me, and they must have had some program for high risk first generation students, and he actually let me in provisionally. Well, about a semester later, he actually offered me an internship in his office, and I spent 3.5 years as an intern in the admissions office. I even minored. I took all my minor credit, all my elective credit was credit working in the admissions office. So really kicked off my higher education career. Loved it. Just loved it.
What was your major?
I was a political science major, so I thought I might do that law school route.
Okay.
And I love politics, local politics. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And, I also got involved first week at campus. I met the director of campus life, Bill Laundrie. I just saw him the other night in a restaurant. Another shout out to Bill. He took one look at me and my friend, and he goes, you need a job. I said, yeah, we do need a job. And he hired us to work I was the mailman. So for 4 years, I delivered mail to all the dorms. Then I worked on the buildings and grounds department, setting up chairs and delivering cases of paper. And so that was my day job. Then I worked for Steve Carpenter at Liquor and Wine Warehouse all through college. That was my night job. And then weekends and holidays, I worked with Northeast Piping, Contracting and Piping. So, worked my way through college. And I think it was the hard work that paid off. But yeah, it's kind of weird when you look back at it. For someone who doesn't like school and wasn't good at it and has this massive test phobia, I think one of the biggest influences was once I finally got that acceptance I could not wait to go to school the next day and tell my two favorite teachers. Well, my two favorite teachers was my current chemistry teacher, which I was terrible at.
This is from high school.
Yeah, back in high school. Well, they both pulled me into the back room and they said, well, you know what? We have bets. I don't think you're going to last one semester, and he doesn't think you're going to last a week. And that hurt, and that cut deep.
This was after you'd been accepted?
After I'd been accepted.
Wow.
We've got bets. We don't think you're not college material. You're not going to last. I mean, that really, really got my dander up.
Wow.
And I left there, and I vowed I'll never going to talk to them again. And someday I'm going to come back in here. 4 years later, I'm going to slap that diploma on their desk. So over the next 4 years, if I see them at a parade or something, I'd go the other direction. Wouldn't say hi to them, wouldn't go talk to them. These are my favorite, beloved teachers from high school.
Yeah.
And there's so many times I wanted to quit. I'm like, damn it, I am not going to let those guys get the satisfaction of me quitting. So fast forward 4 years, I graduated. I get accepted to grad school. It's another chapter. Go back to the school, bring my diploma, slapped it on the desk, and they started to laugh. And it was only then and there that it occurred to me what they did. They set me up.
Yeah.
They set me up. And I thank them profusely every time I see them for setting me up. But boy,
Because they knew you would react to that.
they knew I'd react to it. And you know what? They set me up. I got those guys. I think you look back, and I could count on some key mentors in my life that kept me in school, kept me going when I didn't want to do it, wanted to quit. So it's an amazing story what they did for me.
As soon as you said that, I was like, because one, that's hard. I say harsh.
It was
It's
harsh.
tough love to give a kid, but it's also one, if the people that give you the tough love, which I typically go to like old coaches, like high school coaches and things like that, are the ones that care the most, where they know how to get you going, and they know that
They knew me all too well.
Yeah.
They knew that competitive side of me.
Yeah.
Remember that test phobia?
Yeah.
I was very competitive, just wasn't good at school. So, yeah, I thank them to this day for doing that to me. And then people like Bill Laundrie, I just saw in a restaurant the other night. I thank him every time I see him for giving me a job and showing me that you can actually have a career working in a college. Didn't know that. I had no idea. And gave me a job, and then led to become as a resident assistant. I got to live on campus and be an RA, and then that led to grad school, led to being a dorm director. It all just took off from there. I can trace everything back to those two fateful events. Rich Higgins let me in, Bill Laundrie giving me a job, and those two teachers who said they had bet saying I couldn't do it.
This is, I'm going a little off topic here, but when I look at stuff,
I warned you about that.
No, it's fine. When things happen, I'm always big on like things happen for a reason, and I really think that like when you go and like this is stuff I've thought more and more about. Like if you like those two moments are not significant acts at the end of the day, meaning like them talking to you or saying that it's a conversation, like that it could have been the same conversation, but it's the words, it's the meaning behind it, and it's timing, and you needed to hear it or whatever. But something like, it's funny the memories that you have in life of like a phrase or a word, where if you said like describe your let's say kindergarten classroom, you probably, it's hard. You'd be like, I kind of remember the Cubbies were here.
Like Mrs. Wilson, my kindergarten
it'd be
teacher.
hard,
Some
but then
memories come back.
But then at one point, like I remember I was standing next to this kid and this happened, and like, and it's funny what vivid memories stick with you for your lifetime and which ones have importance.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying there is like I'm going to take just spouse as an example. A lot of like I've seen people say like, well, if I move here, or if I move there, or if I move there, like what happens if I live somewhere else? Would I have met a different person? Yeah. And I think you probably could, but I think at the end of the day, that was who you're supposed to meet. So I think you take a lot of people and like, well, you married someone else who was local, and like had you lived 3 hours away, you would have married someone different. Like, yeah, probably, most likely. Yeah. But for some reason, I was kept here and whatever, and she was kept here, and I happened to run into her at a time. And me and my wife always talk about this. Like, had I met her 5 years prior, we never would have been together or whatever. We have a different, like a little bit of an age gap, but we also, like at the time, just never would have been compatible. So like, I think things happen for a reason where, like I meant to marry the girl I married, but had I like for some reason like at 21 moved to like Utah, I probably would have married someone from Utah, and that's who I should have been with. Yeah. So I don't like overthinking. So for you, it's like I should have talked to those guys. Rich was the guy I needed to talk to. What happens if Rich was sick that day and you talked to someone else there? Like all these really weird chance encounters. Yeah. So it's always funny it's funny what sticks with you. Yeah. Or completely turns the tide of your life.
I really believe that.
Yeah.
Things happen at a moment in time.
Yeah.
You just can't predict it. You can't plan it.
So going forward, Steve, because we got a resume here. I don't, like I said, we got a little bit of, I'm going to brush through a lot, but let's talk about what you do now. and then I'll kind of go back into history because I feel like if I jump through all the history, I might miss some of the good stuff right now. So
let's work backwards.
Yeah, I like this. So Vice President of Institutional Advancement at Clinton Community College. Give us a little background. What is that for people that do not know? And how long you been in there?
Well, I'm starting my 21st year in this position. And basically my job is to actually have two jobs. I'm the executive director of the Clinton Community College Foundation. So it's a separate 501c3 organization. It's got its own board of directors, its own governance, its own budget. We are tasked with raising funds, private support, to turn around and be able to provide scholarship dollars, emergency funds for students to come to school, to get an education so they can then go on and do something great. So I've been doing it for, again, going in my 21st year for raising funds. I'm also vice president for the college, so I also oversee government relations, marketing, public relations. Did a lot of work with the Institute for Advanced Manufacturing, the Alumni Association. So I tell everybody I got the most fun job on campus. I really do. Okay. I have such a great job. I've seen a lot of changes over the years. I've seen that campus grow and improve, and then we got major news that we're moving. So that's another whole topic that's been on the most interesting list lately. Everybody wants to talk about the fact that we're moving our campus to Plattsburgh State's campus. So
which I want to go over.
Yeah, but we can go down that rabbit hole. I
was going to say you pick which direction.
Yeah, we'll go back to just talking about the jobs. So, I was that student. I was that first generation student, not knowing what I wanted to do. And again, I would have been a fantastic Clinton Community College student. It would have been perfect for us. And I see firsthand people who have a desire to get an education. Mm-hmm. A lot of our students at Clinton are adult students, students who, for whatever reason at this point in their life, they can't just pack up and move and go to another school. They have a family. They live here. Mm-hmm. They didn't have the greatest grades maybe in high school or prior college. They come to a small community college, because we're open enrollment. We do not turn anybody away. I know what it's like to be turned away. Mm-hmm. We don't. If you want to learn, we'll take you. Small classroom sizes, if you can commit to 2 years, then you can earn a degree. And I believe in what I call it the steps. So when you graduate from high school, you have earned a high school diploma. When you go 2 more years to a community college and you do well and you pass, you can get an associate's degree. So you've climbed to that step. From there, if you want to transfer, go on, get an advanced degree, transfer to Plattsburgh State or anywhere else, 2 more years, you have a bachelor's degree. Now, depending on what you want to do, maybe you need to go on to get a master's degree. 2 more years, you got a master's. So what I see happen too often, I think it's unfortunate, students who weren't quite ready jump from high school into a 4-year degree program. Anywhere, pick a college, doesn't matter what college. They go 2 years, 3 years, and something happens. They funk out, something happens in life, whatever it is, they don't complete that 4-year journey. When you go to fill out a job application, it comes to that line that says, what is your highest education obtained? It's still high school. Mm-hmm. It's high school diploma. Whereas I like to say, hey, instead of making that full jump, let's take this in steps. Go to the community college. So many advantages, much more affordable, get you out in 2 years, small class sizes. 2 years from now, we'll hand you, you've earned it, an associate's degree. Now, when you fill out a job application, what's your highest educational attainment? I have a college degree. It's an associate's degree. Excellent. Then if you want to go on, we call it on-ramps and off-ramps. So maybe you want to step off, go on the off-ramp and go work for a couple of years in the industry or your field. Then you decide, hey, I want to go back to school. Okay, I go back on-ramp. I get back on the track. Now I'm going to work towards a bachelor's degree. Excellent. Finish your degree. 2 years later, boom, here's your bachelor's degree. So I like it as a series of steps versus really rolling the dice, especially for students who are not really that strong academically, that you're going to complete in 4 years. And statistically, so few students complete a 4-year degree in 4 years. It's like 5 or 6. Same with community college. So, 2-year degree, it takes you 2 or 3 or 4 years to complete your degree, but you do complete at some point.
I like how you put that. So I'm going to go back to when I ended up going to college. Like I went to Plattsburgh State, and I'll give you my background, how I would have changed it, and I also want you to speak on this. So my thing was when I went to college, that was the logical next step, which was we said before. Clinton Community College at the time, like I didn't really want to go away because I didn't. Two things, I didn't have a real direction for college. I didn't really care, so I was like, and I was an odd 17-year-old. In the case of, I didn't want student debt loan, and I don't know why I knew that at 17.
Good for you.
But luckily, I was exposed to just a couple books and things I was reading, and kind of understood how that process worked. So I was like, you know what? I don't want to travel. I want to stay at home. I'm going to save my money. My two options are Clinton or Plattsburgh. My thought was, I'm not going to Clinton because Clinton is not as good as Plattsburgh. Now, this was 17-year-old, 18-year-old Galen, but I think you pretty much could go back to anybody probably in their 30s or 40s right now. If you asked them, what was your thought in the 2000 range area, they probably would have said the same thing. Like, I got to go to college, and like Clinton was like, you weren't going to go to Clinton. That's where all the kids that weren't serious about school went. And now, wiser 15 years removed Galen, it would say, if I could redo high school and college again, I would do at the same time frame. So not how we know it today, but back in 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9, that range, I would have gone to CV Tech in high school. 100%. I would not have done what I did. What I did was the AP Calculus, AP Stats, Science, Bio, Chemistry, all that stuff.
All the college prep courses.
Because when I was in high school, any kid that was in tech math or tech science or went to CV Tech was looked down upon.
Yeah. I remember those days.
Which, and it wasn't like looked down like they're bad kids, but it was like, that's the easy route. I'm going to go the studious route because this is what the smart kids do. And it wasn't, and I don't say that as like to belittle those people, but that was a stigma back then. And that's, I believe, like, well, no, I can do chemistry. Why would I go to CV Tech or tech math? I'll tell you right now, at 34 years old, the amount of chemistry I use in my life is zero. The amount of just basic math that I have to do, just household chores, I should say chores, but household like DIY weekend projects and things like that. I would love to know how to completely rig up my electric. I would love to know how to do all my plumbing without watching YouTube videos. That I would have done that, and then if I would have went to college after that, I would have went to Clinton to save the money. Knowing that it would have given me a little bit of a taste of outside of high school, structuring my own day, having a little bit different routine than from high school, and then I would have had a better idea of what I wanted to do 2 years from now with a much less financial obligation, and probably would have had more flexibility because I would have been exposed to different people in college that would have given me a different idea of stuff. And this is something I'm dealing with right now, like 2024 to this day. I heard this line recently about a lot of people have unknown unknowns in their life, meaning there's things you don't know that you don't know because you don't even know they exist. And going into college, I would have been exposed to things that were unknown unknowns to me that would have laid out a different pathway. Now, I would never go back and change history, but if I could give my advice to my younger self, which is my 3 children now, I would say, hey, those are awesome opportunities if you want to pursue them. And if you have any interest in them, I think they're worth pursuing. I mean, do what you want, but this is what I think. And I think that is my full circle of like, I would have, knowing what I know now back then, I would have redone it. So how many...
You summed it up perfectly.
Okay. I was going to say, pick that apart.
No.
I'm sure you deal with those objections.
You've summed it up perfectly. Yeah. I think what's very, very hard today is the pressure we put on that 17 and 18-year-old, that high school junior, senior. What are you going to do in life? Where are you going to go to college? I mean, they don't know. And, it's hard because I know how overloaded our poor guidance counselors are with the caseload that they're carrying and the issues that they're dealing with. And there's not enough hours in the day to really spend and deep dive on some career counseling. I think a lot of students start like you. I need to go to college. Well, what are you going to take? I don't know. What's your end result? Well, I don't know. Well, how do you know you're in the right college taking the right classes? Because they're all different. Imagine in a perfect world if we could spend a little more extra time in that 16, 17, 18-year-old sophomore, junior, senior in college exploring. Hey, if you don't like the sight of blood, I highly recommend you don't go into the nursing program or a vet tech program. We could start eliminating what it is you don't like. And then we start narrowing it down what it is that you do like. And then we're going to say, what's the best cost-effective way then to reach that goal? One of the frustrating things, I serve on a wonderful nonprofit called the Bruce Crary Foundation. It's a nonprofit out of Elizabethtown. It was started by a World War II vet. Great guy. Did well in life, never married, didn't have any kids. And before he passed, he wrote his will saying, if I'm not here anymore, take all my money and create a foundation to help students go to college for the North Country. So I'm on that committee. So we give out probably, 150 to 180 students. I read all their scholarship applications. I read their letters, and I read the letters from the guidance counselors, and I read their career goals. And, we do our very best to try to support them. But I find it frustrating when I can see the lack of research done by the student. I think they spend more time researching what cell phone they're going to get than they do where they're going to go to school. Right?
Yeah,
right?
100%.
And I see in the letter, the student will say, I really want to be a teacher. That's awesome. I want to be a teacher. I know I got to get a bachelor's. I got to get a master's. But boy, I got a great chance to go to XYZ big name private college. Tuition's only $80,000 a year. Okay, well, that's good. Let's do a little math here. Let's multiply that times 4. Well, I got a scholarship for half. Oh, that's wonderful. Let's divide that in half then. A little bit of time spent with them saying, why don't you go to someone like Plattsburgh State, for example? You can even live on campus and spend less money and get out of school with a lot less debt. Because ultimately, you're going to need to get that master's degree in education. So why not save some money and be strategic in your planning as an undergrad? So I just think it's sad and it's frustrating. I think I was fortunate because my wife and I both are college degrees, and we were able to guide our kids when they're really young. Here's what a high school degree is. Here's an associate's. Here's a bachelor's. Here's a master's. Maybe you don't need those things, but if you do, this is where you can go to get them. So we were able to provide some good advice, and all 3 of my kids have done very well academically and couldn't be more proud. But I just think it's a challenge, try to get more information out. And of course, when you're 17 and 18, you know everything, right? Your parents are the village idiot. I mean, they don't become smart till you turn at least 30, 35. So still waiting, my kids, to say Dad's not the village idiot.
They just got to listen to the podcast.
I know. But it is, you got to make your own mistakes too.
Yeah.
I see that. But boy, why come out of there owing $20,000, $30,000 or more? I know students that are $200,000 in student loan debt. I mean, that's more than your first mortgage. So it's sad to see that happen when it doesn't have to happen.
When so a couple other things I want to speak onto that. When I went to college, my parents, they saved up money for college. And this was the rule. We have saved up X amount. You can do whatever you want. This is all you're getting. So I said, okay. So my head was like, I am going to go as cheap as possible. So, but this is twofold. So number one, I had almost zero college experience, partly by choice, 100% by choice. I didn't stay on campus. I was coaching. I was not teaching. I was coaching. I was working. I was I was commuting 15 minutes to college, 15 minutes back, and I was in and out. If I was between classes, I was sitting in my car doing homework or listening to ESPN radio. Yeah. And I never mingled with anybody. Yeah. But so I missed out, I would say, on the quote unquote college experience.
And let's go back and define that. After finish your thought, we'll go back and define that college experience.
And this is what I'm also going to say. If you asked me right now, would you have wanted more of a college experience? I'd be like, yeah, but not really. I wouldn't have changed anything to have that. So my thought was I didn't care about it enough at the time, and I don't care enough about it now. And I also know now, being older, college is kind of the same thing as high school. It's a very, very quick moment in time. And it's at a point in your life where, at least for me, I wasn't very established, meaning I'm more established now. I have a wife, I have a kid, work, house. I'm more anchored down than I was back then. So back then I was like, I'm glad I did the route I did. But the other thing was, I still got my parents still gave me the money. So I came out with zero debt. by choice. I had some scholarships, but zero debt. I didn't live on campus because I knew that would save even less money. So my other benefit was I got a car. Now this thing was a death trap. It was about the cheapest intro car you could get, but it was a car. Yeah. So I had a car to commute, and then I took the rest of the money. I bought an apartment building, which I still own to this day. And this was, now I know I was a weird kid because I tell my wife this and she goes, "Who? Like, what are you doing?" And I was like, no, but I had, luckily, like my dad had been in business. My dad didn't go to college. My mom went to college. She was a teacher. She had her master's, but my dad gave me a book when I was 16, 17, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which was a very iconic classic, kind of, Robert Kiyosaki. And I read it, and that led into a couple other ones. I took a sociology course in high school with I'll say his name. He's still a local teacher, but I don't think he teaches anymore. He's Justin Frechette at all?
I know the name.
So he's at Beekmantown now, but at the time he was a teacher at Shazy. And he was a history teacher, but he did a sociology class for seniors in high school. I've never told him this. If I see him, I'll tell him this. But he taught a class my senior year of high school. Now I'm 18 at the time. This was the first semester. I'm 17, turning 18 in this semester. Yeah. Senior year, he decides to spend 3 weeks of it basically going over like life skills. Yeah. And thank God he did, because it was the first time I had ever heard of retirement accounts. Mm-hmm. First time I ever heard of debt. First time I've ever heard of term and life insurance. Yeah. For the stuff you actually need as an adult. The first time I ever heard it was basically the couple months leading up to being 18. Yeah. Coupled that with the books, I was very lucky. When you talk about life-defining moments, at that point I was like, oh, the unknown I was talking about. This was unknown to me starting my senior year of high school, which is kind of to the point where you're almost a legal adult and you don't know this stuff. Yeah.
You're going to be thrown out there into the real world and need to make some of these decisions.
Yeah, so that definitely was part of like, oh no, I'm saving money. Like he didn't do it like in a scary way, but in my head I was like, I don't want to pay that. Like, why would I do that? And so that was the route how I did all of that. But again, I was fortunate enough that was my mindset, and I'm kind of a delayed gratification person. So I was like, I don't need the fun stuff now because I want to make sure I'm able to like get my feet on the ground. But that was my story, and to kind of say like what was the trade-off? Like I didn't get the college experience, but I'm good with that. In my opinion,
you are the rare exception. Are, yeah. And I define the college experience. I mean, like you, my first 3 years, I commuted, I lived at home, went to work, had 2-3 jobs.
Yep.
But because I worked in residence life, I actually understood that there's a whole life going on. And I got hired, fortunately.
Well, don't you get some financial benefits too?
Yeah. So I was able to be hired as a resident assistant my senior year. Okay. So that means I got a free room on campus and half off my board.
Yeah.
Well, that's a pretty good deal. Mm-hmm. So my last year living on campus was an eye-opener. And this is what I define the college experience. One of the biggest things is learning to live with others, learning to tolerate other people, learning to live with people who are different than you. That to me was an eye-opener. And they really do say some of the best friends you'll have for the rest of your life you met living on campus. And to this day, I can say that. So that was such an eye-opener for me. And I compare my first 3 years to my last year living. It was night and day difference. And I made all three of my kids live on campus their first year. If you don't like it, you can move off. But you need to live your first year because you're going to need to learn to live, to work, to study with people who are different from you, different cultures, different backgrounds, building up a tolerance, which I think is it's a life skill more than just a college experience. Yeah. And then what that led to me was the ability at that point I had to decide, all right, do I go out in the world of work, political science degree? What do you do with that? So I took one look at the law school entrance exam. I thought, oh my God, there's no way I'm going to take this. As luck would have it, I learned, again, about that time, you could have a whole career working at a college. I was fortunate Plattsburgh State had a wonderful program. It was a master's degree in student personnel. So giving you a degree on how to work with college students. So I'm like, hey, that's what I need to go. I need to apply to that. Well, again, guess what? They needed a 3.0 GPA to get in that program. I had a 2.7. Rejected again. Deja vu all over again. Like, no, this can't happen. So I didn't wait for my third rejection. I waited just after my first. I went back, spoke to the chair of the department. Again, I got in on a "we'll take a chance on you" speech. I also was fortunate. I interviewed, was hired to become a residence hall director in grad school. So what that means is free room. So you got an apartment for 2 years for free. You got food, meal plan for free. You got a salary, you got a stipend, and your tuition is free.
Yeah.
So basically, I got paid to go to grad school. So those two things fell into place. I got free room and half off my board to be an RA, and then for 2 more years, living on campus, I was in charge of an entire residence hall. I had a staff of 6 RAs working for me, going to school full time, but everything was paid. So that, to me, got me a master's degree at no cost. Actually, I got paid to go to school. And that's when it started to click.
I almost want to call you Rudy.
Yeah, Rudy.
I feel like you're Rudy there. St. Mary's, like get in the door, or get in the door at Notre Dame. So the other thing I'll say on that, too, I agree. I do think the one thing the exact thing you said about living with others is probably the only thing that I would have preferred was just having a little bit more exposure to other people.
It's the exposure, because in the classroom,
I agree. Yeah,
you sit in a class, you don't have a lot of talk, you don't really interact, you're not going to the dining hall with them, you're not going to an event with them, you're not seeing them in the lounge, they're not cranking their music at 2:00 in the morning, they're not, building that tolerance and appreciation for different people from different cultures and different backgrounds was invaluable for me.
Now the other thing too that you said is you're working, but you have 6 people underneath you. So I said, talk about life skills of just managing leadership, all the above.
100%.
I mean, that's hard to do.
Yeah.
Did you find, what were you about 22 at the time?
21, 22 years old. Yeah.
Like, what was that like, overseeing other people, kind of leading, being a leader in that department?
It was great.
Yeah.
I got a great staff. We had to do evaluations on your staff. You held office hours. You had, office hours for your residents. You had to manage. Sometimes you would have a staff member, one of my favorite, who's gone on to do great things in this world, decides to go to Montreal for the weekend. And he's on duty. So when you're on duty, you are in charge of the floor. You have a whole list of things you got to do. You're the official person on duty. This guy crosses the border, gets in, then he calls me. This is the old days before cell phones. Leaves a voicemail on my answer machine. He's like, "Oh, I'm going to Montreal for the weekend." I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to kill this guy when he gets back." He just went and did it. So then, as a manager, you got to figure out, now what are you going to do? You have someone who's not there. Yeah. And then again, I had the best staff in the world, and my RAs have all gone to do great things. They're just a great group of people. But
so you're still in touch with all of them?
Most of them, yeah. They're starting to retire, and I'm still working. So I don't know. I work because I like to work. But it is amazing at a very young age, learning how to, again, manage a staff. We had a budget. It wasn't a big budget. You had some money in your budget to provide programming for your residence hall. So I had to allocate the budget between the 6 staff members. So if they wanted to bring in a speaker and you needed $50 for a pizza party, or you needed to pay a stipend for somebody, and again, you taught you some financial skills, some budgeting skills, some management skills, some personnel skills with your staff that was absolutely great training.
So once you start doing all that, so you're running, you're doing the RA thing, you're doing the the grad school thing. When you were going through that, was it still the idea that you wanted to stay local?
No, that's a great point.
Because I'm looking at your resume, because I see Clinton Community College, I see Paul Smith's. I don't know if
Plattsburgh.
I was going to say, were you ever formally at Plattsburgh after?
Well, so yes, I did. Okay. So after
you got quite the resume here. So
you couldn't have teed this up better. So while I was in grad school, my last semester of graduate school, I actually was presenting at a national conference in St. Louis, Missouri, on some research that I did with my professor.
Okay.
So we go to this national conference, and it happened to also be a job fair for people who are professionals in student affairs. And there were colleges from all over the country was at the conference. You could sign up And back in the old days, hard to believe there was no email. You literally photocopied your resume and you would put it in these mailboxes. So, for example,
That's so wild.
there was a job posting at Tulane University in New Orleans to be an area coordinator. So in that case, you're in charge of 3 or 4 residence halls, not just one, but 3 or 4, an area. So I actually dropped my resume in their little mailbox, and they interviewed me on the spot.
So you were down there.
I was down presenting as a presenter, presenting some research.
You said it was from New Orleans.
This was a national conference, so all the colleges were coming into St. Louis, Missouri.
So their boxes were at the conference.
They're at the conference.
I was like,
so
you're putting some miles on.
It was a great
Okay.
idea.
Okay.
So cool. So I put my resume in Ohio. I really did have the bug. It's time for me to get out of Dodge.
Okay.
Freshly minted. I'll have a master's degree. All this. I'm going to get out of Dodge. Still wanted to work at a college. So I put my resume in a mailbox for Tulane University, Ohio State, University of Washington, and UConn. Okay. At the interview, they actually quickly contacted me from Tulane University in New Orleans and interviewed me on the spot. Did so well, they invited me to fly down to Tulane 2 weeks later to actually interview with the college, the president of Tulane, and I must interview with 40 people at that thing. Wow. And so I arrive at midnight, flying out of Plattsburgh. My luggage is still sitting in Newark, New Jersey. It's now midnight in New Orleans. I'm wearing a Boston College sweatshirt, jeans, and boat shoes with no socks at my 8 o'clock interview in the mornings with the president of Tulane University. Okay, we have a problem here. I felt like John Boy Walton. You probably don't remember the Waltons.
Oh, yeah, I do.
Yeah. I felt like John Boy Walton who rode a donkey to high school wearing bib overalls. That's how I felt. So
John Boy was the leader of that family at
he was
16.
So the airport person felt so bad. She goes, look, here's a little bag with a toothbrush and toothpaste and $100 voucher. Go buy some interview clothes. I said,
wow, that's nice.
Before 8 o'clock in the morning in New Orleans. So this young kid, RA, came and picked me up at the airport. I told him my tail low woe. He goes, I'll pick you up at 7 a.m. We'll go find some clothes. I'm like, really? In New Orleans, 7 a.m. Sure enough, we found a store that actually was open. For $100, all I could afford was a pair of Dockers and a white dress shirt. Couldn't even afford a tie. So here I am, walk into the president's office.
Boat shoes still on.
Still wearing boat shoes, no socks. The president of the college heard my tale of woe, and he laughed. He sat back, he took his tie off, and he handed it to me. He goes, here, you wear this for the rest of the day. I couldn't believe it. It was awesome. Had a great interview, interviewed all day long. Ultimately, they offered me the job. So this is cool. And I had a job also back at Plattsburgh State. So I was going to go work for their career planning and placement office. So helping students, because I'm very passionate about planning your career and planning what you want to do. So it came down to the Ohio State one. I forgot, UConn. I had a couple of job interviews. No offers were made. So it came down to Tulane University in New Orleans. Hey, kind of cool. I go there for 2-3 years in New Orleans and have a great time. I had family down there. Yeah. Or do I stay at Plattsburgh? The Plattsburgh job was considerably more money, believe it or not, than prestigious Tulane University. I just met my wife. I'm like, okay, you know what? Maybe I'll stay. And I ended up staying. And then I worked for 2 years in the career planning and placement office at Plattsburgh. My job was finding what were called co-ops. So it was your paid internships opportunities around the country. So I was flying to these events. I was sending students down to Disney in Orlando for a co-op, or different hotels and restaurants, or different jobs, anywhere in the country. So it was a really, really great opportunity to work in career planning and placement. But it was grant funded. In the 2 years, the grant was not renewed. Luckily, there was a director of career planning and placement at Clinton Community College opened up that same time period. So I finished up at Plattsburgh State on a Friday, and Monday morning I was working at Clinton as the director of career. So to me, in my mind, I advanced from being a staff member to actually a director of an office, which is great. So I did that for a couple of years in the early 90s.
So I guess, okay, so early 90s. I'm looking at this for the resume. So when did you go from...
I'll fill in the blanks for you again.
Yeah, I'm missing the 90s.
Yeah, I'm going to throw you a lifeline here. So picture me now in
Montpelier, Vermont.
Yeah, okay, 92 to 94. I'm the director of career planning and placement at Clinton Community College. Really enjoying it. came down with a highly contagious disease back then. It was called the grass is greener on the other side of the fence syndrome. And what really made me mad was my beloved nurses. Everybody knows I'm the biggest fan of our nursing program. I'm like, why am I placing these nurses in jobs making more, right out of college with a 2-year degree? I'm sitting here with a master's degree, and they're making more money than I am. Mm-hmm. So I got this wild hair to go into the financial services business. So I
Chase the money.
Chase the money. So I studied hard, got my securities licenses and insurance licenses, and ended up working for a company called National Life. My focus was on pensions, worked with National Pension Services. Went around to small businesses, setting up retirement plans and pensions, managing assets for retirees. Did that for 7 or 8 years and was relatively successful at it.
Commuting over there?
No, we had an office here in Plattsburgh.
Okay.
I commuted to Burlington. I was working out of Lake Placid. I mean, it was a really interesting lifestyle. But what I learned, a couple things. I missed higher ed. And in that world, that's the financial service, that's a shark eat shark world.
Yeah.
I mean, someone will chew your fin off right next to the person who sits next to you on the desk. And I really did miss working at a campus and working with students and being part of that energy and that whole college experience again. So right about that time, this was in 2001, there was a position back at Clinton. It was called the Dean of Development. And basically it was coming back to manage the foundation, to start raising some money. In the meantime, I had learned to raise money working at the Clinton County Fair. We'll go down that rabbit hole. It's another whole section because I was doing.
I was
doing all the raising the money for sponsorships for the fair. So I got pretty good at fundraising. Took the job 2001. Worked there for 18 years. The job evolved from just doing fundraising to more of the VP for advancement work again. So took on marketing, college relations. Love with my political science background. I love government relations, working with our elected officials and. I was working within our local county legislator, our state representatives. I was going down to D.C. at least once a year, working with our federals. So great part of the job. So then 4 years ago, so instead of having this contagious disease called the grass is greener, I had a midlife crisis. So my midlife crisis is I really wanted a 1966 Corvette Stingray, but that's not going to happen. But I really always wanted to work at a private school. So my whole career since high school was working at SUNY, working at State University of New York. I had worked at a 4-year public school. I'd worked at a 2-year public school. Colleagues and I was always talking about the difference between private colleges and public colleges. So I really, 18 years, I'm thinking, have I overstayed my time at Clinton? Every time I would go to my state conferences, I'd meet my colleagues from other colleges. 3 to 5 years, they're on to something different. Here's old Colonel Sanders down there raising my hand. I'm doing this for 18 years. So it started to, maybe I have overstayed. I want to challenge myself. I'm from Clinton County. I know I'm related to half of Clinton County. I can tell you every person on that campus, from the facilities department to the newest faculty, their kids' names. I can tell you through my work with the Plattsburgh Rotary Club, all the different organizations, I really wanted to figure out, could I take this skill set that I think I have, could I transplant that somewhere else? What if I took a job in Seattle, Washington? Could I be as successful if I went somewhere where I didn't know another soul? Mm-hmm. Could I literally start from scratch and be effective in fundraising? Well, I really didn't want to sell my house. I really didn't want to leave the North Country. Lo and behold, a position opened up at Paul Smith College. It was for a vice president for advancement. Same job, but a private school. And it's commutable. So it was only an hour. So I drove an hour in the morning and an hour to come home. I did that for 3 years. Got a tremendous experience. And it really is night and day difference. Students won't notice it. But in terms of administration and budgets and funding and the focus on philanthropy, night and day difference. Thoroughly enjoyed my time at Paul Smith College. Absolutely thoroughly enjoyed it. So, okay, I could go on, but I see you got a question percolating over there, so I'll push the pause button.
I almost feel like you're going to answer it, but what was why private college? What pulled you to private college?
Yeah.
And speak more about night and day difference between the two.
Well, first of all, at a private school, they could pick and choose who they want to admit to the college.
Okay, so not open enrollment.
It's not an open enrollment. I mean, not only do you have to have good grades, you got to have letters of reference. I mean, they could be very choosy who they want to accept. Whereas you show up at our door, we're going to let you in. So that's different. Private schools lack the state funding that we have at SUNY. So just a step back. So in terms of money coming into Clinton Community College, we have 3 revenues of money. Students who pay tuition, SUNY, who pays us for students, and the Clinton County. We have a 3-source funding stream. That's where the revenue comes from. At SUNY Plattsburgh, or any of the 4-year state up, Potsdam, Oswego, you can name them, they've got state University of New York funding and student. They lack the 3rd, which is the county revenue. That's all cool. When you go to a private school, you've only got 2 sources of revenue, and the main one is student tuition. Mm-hmm. There's no state. There's no county. The only other money that comes in there is grants and philanthropy. So I really wanted to go to a school where philanthropy was just critically important.
And Steve, is that the same for every private college around?
Yeah, if you think about it, because they're private, they're not funded by state tax dollars.
So if you go to like a Duke, or if you go to like there's tons.
Name them.
Yeah.
Go to Middlebury. I mean,
yeah, true.
They're not being funded by the state of Vermont. They don't have tax dollars. Whereas anywhere, 64 campuses with SUNY, those are your tax dollars that are going to support that college. When you go to a private college, they're on their own. So they make their reputation on students who pay a lot higher tuition to go and the alumni to pay it back, to obviously pay it forward to support the school. It's critically important, critical focus, on fundraising. About the same size school in terms of number of students as Clinton, about the same number of faculty and staff, about the same number of alumni. But I went from a staff of 1.5 at Clinton to a staff of 9. Unbelievable. I had a budget that was 7 or 8 times bigger. Money to use to raise money. It takes money to raise money. Mm-hmm. So I had an incredible experience. I learned working with that organization. I had a great team that I inherited when I got there. I learned how to use data for fundraising. That was foreign to me, how to use data. How to data mine your own database to raise money. How to use metrics to evaluate everything you do with your fundraising. What was the actual cost to raise that dollar? What was the ROI? Mm-hmm. What was the opportunity cost that you gave up because you chose to do this event over here? So 3 years working there. The trustees, entirely different structure for trustees. Our trustees at Clinton, incredibly generous people, but they're appointed either by the county or by the state. Trustees at the private schools, who's got the biggest checkbook? So we had trustees that literally flew in their corporate jets to land.
Paul Smith.
Yeah, to land at Lake Clear Airport to come to board meetings. Incredible. Just an incredible different world up there. So I can go on and on. I'm going to write a book about the differences, but it was incredible.
What's Paul Smith's? I think Paul Smith's. I think like environmental science, or I think like culinary,
forestry, culinary, hospitality. So those are the flagship programs.
So when you look at someone flying in on a private jet, I'm assuming did they go to Paul Smith's?
Some did.
So then
some did. Not all of them.
So how do you rope in someone like that? Because again, I'm going to say Paul Smith's to me seems like some hillbilly campus up in where's the actual town?
The St. Regis. So it's in the town of Paul Smith. The little hamlet of Paul Smith. It's on Lower St. Regis Lake. So there's Upper St. Regis, Lower St. Regis, and Spitfire. It's the same body of water.
Like when you go, and again, I like Lake Placid, Saranac Lake. There's so much. Like there's a lot of affluent people up there. But again,
they're the second homeowners.
Yep. Absolutely. And yes, you're speaking my language in real estate, but you end up looking at like that area, and I'm like, to me, Paul Smith's, and again, this is just me growing up, is the Clinton of the woods, basically, and it was kind of the same thing, unless, of course, you think of, or my thought goes to like culinary or forestry or something outdoors.
Specialty.
So I'm always thinking like, okay, these are the Smoky Bears of the world that want to go out there and save the forest, and they want to go up into this small little place where they don't want to see people, and which I don't know how.
Culturally,
I think I've been to Paul Smith's once in my life.
It's a culturally fascinating campus, but yeah, let's talk about the trustees. A lot of them were graduates of the college. It did very well for themselves. They had a minimum requirement of every trustee had to do a minimum of $5,000 a year gift to the college, minimum.
Okay.
Some of these trustees their annual gift was $100,000 because they could. Incredibly successful. Some of them are people who own these beautiful camps. I see you pulling up St. Regis there.
Yeah.
Who have fourth and fifth generation family great camps on Upper St. Regis, who really love having a college as their neighbor and they want to support it. The board chair is a fantastic guy. He lives in Silicon Valley. They come out for their camp. They'll fly out for a meeting. Folks from Rochester, Buffalo. Again, some were graduates, some were not, but most of them were pretty successful people. Paul Smith's was really interesting because, typical bell curve of your graduates, the ones at the real high end, I got to meet the retired CEO of Dunkin' Donuts. He's a Paul Smith's grad.
That's wild.
2-year degree program in the middle of the woods, goes on to become the CEO of Dunkin' Donuts. Kind, generous man, loves the college, gave back a lot of money to support scholarships and endowments. You had a bunch of them from the hotel industry that really did very well for themselves. So
and it's part of a Paul Smith's hotel.
Yeah, so it's funny. I went from Clinton Community College. It used to be a famous hotel on the lake.
Yep.
To Paul Smith's college. It used to be a famous hotel on the lake. It started by Paul Smith himself. So
I'm just looking at the campus now, and you know what?
You got the Joan Wild Library. There's an example. Joan and Sandy Wild.
I don't know by name.
He's the retired CEO of Citibank. Did well for himself. Joan, they have a camp on Saranac, Upper Saranac. Very generous, very philanthropic people. Joan got involved on the board. So we got the Joan Wild Student Center you're looking at. There's a Joan Wild Library. These are people who are very generous, who want to support education, who don't live here. They have a camp, but their main residence is elsewhere. You work with these folks and you appeal to their interest, and if they like what you're doing and believe in your mission, then they're very generous with supporting it. So it was absolutely an incredible learning opportunity for me to go work there. I was able now to take that. I'll tell you briefly why I left, in case you're wondering. When I first got there, we learned that there was discussions about Paul Smith's partnering with a nonprofit organization out of New York City. And I spent really 3 years regularly going down to New York City, meeting with this other organization. We agreed to work together. We had to have middle states and the state ed department approve this very unconventional relationship. Ultimately, it failed. It was not approved. There wasn't enough of an arm's length relationship between the two organizations.
Yeah.
That it ended up not going through. There's the entrance to Paul Smith's College. During these negotiations, it became apparent to me that I had different philosophy, different view, and did not see eye to eye with the leadership of the other organization. I thought, okay, if this goes through and the leadership of this new organization becomes my boss, that this is probably not going to work. So that's when I decided to part ways. Hadn't yet taken the position back at Clinton Community College. So a good friend of mine I've known for 20 years, he's the CEO of a nonprofit called Health Workforce New York. And I told him I was thinking about doing something different. He's like, oh my God, you got to come work with me. You got to come work with me. I'm going to create a position. I need somebody to do development work. I want to start a philanthropy program. We need to raise money for these nonprofit organizations. And the whole mission is to get young people or anybody onto a career path to work in healthcare, particularly in rural communities in New York State.
Okay.
Well, I can get behind that. Again, I've such a affinity for our nurses and our people who work in healthcare. So left on a Friday, started on a Monday. I knock on wood, I've never been unemployed a day in my life.
That's
never,
wild.
ever. Started on a Monday. So I worked with this organization called Health Workforce New York, 8 months, trying to, doing government relations, trying to do some fundraising, trying to do some marketing. And what I didn't anticipate was in my whole career, if I go to visit somebody, they know why I'm there. I'm there to ask them to support the organization financially. For this organization, nobody, even though they've been around for 20 years, nobody had ever heard of them. It's hard enough to raise money when someone knows who you are. Mm-hmm. So when I work for Paul Smith's or I work for Clinton Community College, yeah, of course I know who you are. I know what the college does. I know, I know what you do. And even then, it takes statistically 7 to 10 visits, before you get a commitment to support it financially. I learned when they don't even know who you are, you're at -7. You've got to double up the time it takes to get that person to understand your organization, make a gift. At the same time, I was watching what was going on at Clinton, what was going on with my foundation operation, and the president asked if I'd come back, and we negotiated. So I came back in July of 23. Thank you for pointing out my typo on my resume there, Galen. So July of 23, I came back. And by my count, this is the 3rd time in my career I've returned to Clinton Community College and took over my old job.
So does it feel like there's like a magnetic pull to Clinton down?
There is indeed. I just love that little school. And what I really love is the students. I love the faculty. We got such dedicated faculty. They can make more money teaching other places. They could do research. I mean, these people are there because they love to work in the trenches with our students.
So I guess speak to Clinton about Clinton, because I'm a lifetime resident of here. I've been to Clinton campus, or I've been on the Clinton campus a handful of times, not a lot, but a handful of times. And I think, again, my knowledge base of Clinton is very limited because I never went to Plattsburgh. But you see, as I've gotten older, as I've gotten more involved and know more people and kind of see how things kind of intertwine and interconnect. Yeah. Clinton is, definitely an anchor in the community. Yeah. And I think if you look at, and I do want to speak about the moving of the campus and stuff going forward, but just speak to the campus itself. Like, what do people expect there? You said small classrooms, obviously it's kind of a starting point for people, but I guess pull back the curtain a little bit and, give us your sell us on Clinton, kind of.
Sell you
however
Clinton.
you want to
there
do
you
this,
go.
I guess. I feel like that's up your alley.
Well, you know what? I mean, again, Clinton is like most community colleges, the mission, you go back to the core mission. The core mission is we're open enrollment. And again, coming from a guy who got denied undergrad, I got denied to go to grad school. Luckily, I'm someone who doesn't take no for an answer. But we don't do that. We will give you a chance. And I think back to a fellow named George Moore, who gave the largest gift in the history of the college, $2 million, unrestricted. It was unheard of. He was interviewed he and I were interviewed for a publication called The Chronicle of Philanthropy. Why did he give $2 million with no strings attached? It's because, one, he trusted us that we would manage the money properly. It was the fact that we're open enrollment. We give everybody a chance. That's critical. And I keep going back to that. We give everybody a chance. Again, not everybody comes to us right out of high school. Some do. Quite a few do come right out of high school, like you did. The traditional route. Mm-hmm. Graduate from high school in June, and you roll in the fall, and you go to school and take classes, and because someone told you need to. Mm-hmm. Not knowing exactly why you're there, what you need to take, but you're kind of there. We have those. We have the adults who, they've struggled in life, or they're at a dead-end job, and they want to do something different. We're there for those people who want to come back. We're there for people who need the flexibility of, maybe taking a class or two in person, maybe taking some online. Hey, I need that extra tutoring. I need that extra one-on-one help in math or English or science or whatever. Again, the small class sizes, it's not a big spread out campus. I remember my first day probably your first day at SUNY Plattsburgh. I said, that's bigger than Shazy Central School. It's bigger than Beekmantown where I went. It's a big campus. Like, oh, I got my schedule up. Where am I going to find Ward Hall? Where's Hawkins? Where's Yoakum? Where are these places? It's kind of stressful to find your way around, not knowing a soul. So I think a lot of the advantages is tuition's less. That's important. The one-on-one ratio is less. So you got much smaller classroom sizes. One of my favorite students at Clinton was a absolute whiz at physics. Graduated from Clinton, transferred to Stony Brook University down in Long Island. His first day of class, there were 750 students in physics class. The room only held 500 in a lecture hall. The overflow room held 250. And there's a professor standing way down on the bottom of the pit, of the lecture hall with a microphone teaching physics. He's like, no, if you didn't get there early to get a seat, you had to sit in the overflow room and watch him on a video. Yeah. That's just not a learning environment that everybody likes. And again, some do. I'll give them credit. You want to have that one-on-one attention with your faculty member. You want to be able to go back to their office afterwards. Hey, can you explain? I don't quite understand this. Can you help me? It's a small town touch that we can do at a small community college. I think that's critical. The other thing that we do really well at Clinton is I brought a copy of, we just printed this, produced it. It's an economic impact report. What if Clinton were not here, didn't exist, how much money would the community be out per year? We did the research, hired Dr. Colin Reed, the
he was
economist.
my economics professor.
We're worth $89 million a year. Between direct spending, indirect spending.
That's revenue to the county?
That's revenue to the county.
Okay.
Imagine us not being here.
Yeah.
Direct, 121 employees. Our direct annual spending is almost $14 million. So I used to do that. I used the same numbers at Paul Smith's. Paul Smith's was a $59 million a year economic. And that was not counting the alumni. That was just direct and indirect.
That was spending or economic impact?
Economic impact.
Okay.
So imagine Saranac Lake. If Paul Smith College was not there, you're losing $59 million a year.
Yeah.
And it's also, that's the waiters, the waitresses, the bartenders, the restaurant owners, the car dealers. You got to understand, if you take that out of I'm not an economist, so I'm not going to go down there, but what's the impact? So the impact for this college is we're an integral part of this community economically. And this was a line that Dr. Reed had wrote, I loved it. And he says, Clinton Community College trains students who could not go to another college or leave their families to study elsewhere. Think about that for a second.
Absolutely.
And again, remember, it's your taxpayer dollars that's supporting SUNY, and particularly Clinton Community College at Plattsburgh State. So the ROI of your taxpayer dollars is that we train people who are from the area and they choose to stay in the area. That's a strong ROI. So very interesting data. I won't bore everybody to death in terms of the actual crunching of the numbers, but incredible impact.
Well, that was something, and again, I was saying as you get older and you start to understand a little bit more of what actually happens and how things work and how things are connected. Like you look at, because you mentioned a little bit, it said the person you hire someone when they stay. So, and I look at that as that helps potentially me, who's looking to buy a home or sell a home or whatever, or move up. And then you start looking at the restaurants. You start looking at just anybody that's coming to Plattsburgh that's trying to sell something, try to put on some type of service, trying to do anything. I guess like an economic 101 for people. I mean, you can boil down economics straight down to supply and demand of anything. And that's really all it is, supply and demand, and obviously what extreme you're going there. But if you take out, this is why like right now we're dealing with like what they call the housing crisis. Like I said, the problem is if you don't have enough housing for people stop moving here for jobs. So then jobs move out of the area because like we can't attract people here, so we got to leave. And then what you start to see is this
ripple effect.
It's a slippery slope down to oblivion. And I think, and the opposite's true. You work your way up and try to build stuff out. And I think, the more people that I've met, the more you realize like every job, it's like part of life. It's the harmony of life. Like every role is important to everybody, and that's why
they're interconnected.
Absolutely. And I think, like I went today, I got a coffee, and went down to the co-op, and like the person checking me out at the co-op, don't know who they are, nice person, but their job my job, meeting you, meeting the person that I went for the walk with, like all these things, we all are in different facets, but like everybody's intertwined. Like they help me in my day. I talk to this person, I meet you, and that, you know, and it's you look at, I mean, this is kind of going, it's kind of like a roundabout way of like going above, but you realize that there's so many things in a community, especially in a small town, that are, you go to a bigger place, people, a lot of places can afford to lose some things here and there.
Right.
You take a small community, you have to be very strategic. You have to be very lean. You have to be very thrifty. You have to, oftentimes, you don't have the money, so you have the time and the effort. I think, and I've said this before, that the North Country is an area that people love it here. At the end of the day, it's because of people, I think. And I think if you boil down, we have a beautiful area. I mean, we have mountains, we have the water, stuff like that. I'm hopefully going skiing tomorrow for the second time this year. So I would say I don't get to take advantage of the outdoors as much as, you know, but I'm not I like golfing, but I'm not I like the seasons, but I wouldn't say that's necessarily what keeps me here. A lot of it is your friends, it's your family. It's
that quality of life.
Yeah. And you see so many people leave, which I think is great. And you see people come back. And I think, I want to speak to, like you said, get out of Dodge kind of thing when you were younger. That is the idea of like, I want to get out of here. And I think anybody that leaves, one of two things happen. They come back because of necessity, or they come back because they like it, one of the two. But there's a third rung of people that won't come back because they feel like they're failures if they return. And I find there's so many people that have come back, they went and grabbed that life experience. And I think the life experience, and perfect example of this is the only reason I'm saying this is the first person that comes to mind when I'm thinking of this is I had Chris Rosenquist on back when he ran originally for mayor.
There's a good Clinton Community College graduate.
Oh,
right
I didn't
there.
know that.
He's an alum.
But perfect example. So Chris was talking about, and Chris is arguably has one of the highest positions or most important positions around, being the mayor of the biggest city. But he went to hopefully I get these correct. I think he was in San Francisco, and I think he was in Minneapolis. What happened was he came back here, and whatever, and I'm taking, this is not a political thing. This is just, here's a guy that went out to different locations that are far different than the North Country, came back to Plattsburgh, and has different experiences that he can pull through and bring it back to the area. Even just going to a couple of the conferences, you have different life, experiences that you can bring back. And I think the people that can go away and learn something, and this is one of the things I talk about, the unknowns. Like I was on a call yesterday. It was a Zoom. Like I didn't have to talk, but I was watching, and you're watching people talk, and these people are all from around the country or around the world. And part of the reason I joined this group was because it's giving me ideas. I don't want to go move to that place that person lives, but I can sit there and say, what are they dealing and what are they thinking? What are they working on? And this isn't just real estate. This was a bunch of different people in all facets and different kind of branches of work. And I was like, I pulled stuff away that I was like, that's really cool. And it might not be anything specific. It could just be the way the confidence they held, or the way they talked, or the plan they had. Where I'm like, wait, how could I do that locally? So, but you're allowed to taking that information or taking that knowledge and bringing it back to the community, I think is so important. That's why I think when people come back, and I don't know if there's people out there, but I feel there's people out there, I think they're failures if they come back. It's like, I'm moving back home, and this is where I started. I'm like, and I think if you can pull back and look at the opportunity of like, hey, I learned a lot.
Well, I think it's your level of self-confidence.
Well, I think there's a mixture there, but I've had people come back, and it's almost like they feel ashamed that they come back. And part of me is like, if someone could take the knowledge that they had, even if they came back because of necessity of like, hey, it was a struggle to move to New York City. It was expensive. Like, yeah, but you got to live in New York for 2 years. Yeah. Like, you must have learned something. Yeah. Can you bring that back and maybe kind of allow? Because I think the one thing the North Country I wish had a little bit more of was the willingness to change in certain facets. Because I think you get the point where some people are like, well, that's the way we've always done it, which I always hate.
I hate that.
Yeah, and that's like my least favorite, because if anybody says that, then I'm like, that probably should be, you should look into that. But I feel like the people that are really trying to, try things and better the community by just like, change is going to happen, and it's a good thing. And I'm someone that likes to embrace it, even though it's like, I got to learn something and it pushes you out of your comfort zone. And it might take a little extra work. I said the payoff's usually better.
Huge.
Yeah.
It's like learning AI. we even go down that road.
Which
yet.
I'm trying to like.
I'm using.
But that's something I'm trying to
every
learn.
day. It's amazing. But
Yeah.
even in my miniature experience, I mean, just going to Paul Smith's. I mean, it's the next county over, but it couldn't be more different than Clinton County. It's a really bizarre. It's almost like there's an iron curtain between Clinton County and Franklin County. It's amazing that I experienced firsthand, and without having to sell my house and move across the country, I was.
It's like driving to Burlington.
Yeah, same
different world.
Same. It's an hour away.
Yeah,
but again, I was able to take that, learned a bunch of new ways to think about fundraising and the thinking about how you work at a college. To bring that back, invaluable. I call it my sabbatical. It was a wonderful learning experience.
I got a couple questions here. I want to, because they still tie on a little bit of what we're talking about, and then I want to go into history here.
Oh, careful! We're going that history.
I was gonna say I might be opening Pandora's box here.
You better bring in the midnight oil. History.
Midnight oil's bourbon. I got some in there. If you
I
want
like
some.
bourbon too. Yeah.
If you want, I'm actually doing good. At the last, I'm doing pretty good with my food consumption and drinks. So I've kind of like taken like a mini, like what's it called? Like
happy hour.
Anti-happy hour. Not in a bad way. Like I still, but I'm like, it was almost like a reset. Like I had to get back to like baseline of like, but bourbon's good. I have it if you want some.
Good.
But, so I guess if you guys see Steve's not talking for a little bit, that's because he walked out and got bourbon.
Yeah, but Steve's still on the clock. I go back to work after this. I'll take a rain check.
There you go. Perfect. But so a couple questions. Number one, I want to talk. Let's talk fundraising first, and then I'll go down through. So, I hate fundraising. I'm going to come out and say it because this is a very selfish question. I have a hard time asking people for money. Mm-hmm. I have a hard time. I know a lot of this is a mental block. So I'm just going to give you my experience. Anybody that ever asked me to be on any type of fundraising committee, when I was younger, I would be like, sure, because I felt like I had to say yes.
Yeah.
I feel extremely uncomfortable asking people. This was even back in high school. This was selling stuff for like school trips. I couldn't stand it. And it wasn't that I didn't believe in what I wanted to sell, which I know is a key. None of that. It's just like I just hate. I feel like I'm making someone feel obligated to give money, because when people ask me, I feel like I don't want to say no, and I'm just going to give them something because I don't want to not. And I don't want to feel like a bad person. Then what would happen is, then as I got older, I was terrible at it, and I'd be the person that would like limp in with like nothing. Then I got to the point where I'm like, oh, we got to sell 40 tickets. I do the math. I'm like, it's $400. I'm going to give you 400,
right. Yep.
So I don't have to sell it.
Yep.
Because I would rather spend the money, and it for me is time wise. I'm like, I don't want to spend the time doing this. I'm just going to give you money, and I'm checking out. Then I got to the point, I would just flat out be like, I'm not on fundraising committees, because I don't like doing it, and it's not something that comes easy to me. Then we run with a few other folks. We run a golf tournament every year we put on that raises a ton of money.
I saw that. Yeah,
and it's a great cause.
Gangbusters.
It's awesome. I think it's I'm going to plug it for a sec. I think it's the fastest growing. It's got to be one of the fastest growing charities. It's the fastest growing golf tournament by far.
Very impressive.
And I think we've given over. I might be wrong on this, but I think we've given over $40,000 in like 5 years.
Yeah.
And that's given, not raised. Like given away. It's a very lean operation, so we give almost every single penny away that we raise. But I am terrible at fundraising for that too. I do all the other stuff. I'll run the golf. I'll run the day of. I'll do all the programming. I'll do the marketing. But I hate doing the fundraising,
logistics, and all that. Good
so.
stuff.
Talking, how do you do fundraising? There's people that I know are good at it. There's people that I know, whatever it is. But again, very selfish. But what makes a good fundraiser? How do you just give me the whole thing. Like, what makes successful fundraising, and how do you do it?
Well, first of all, it might shock you if I tell you I don't like to fundraise.
Okay.
I'm not a good fundraiser. Everything you just described is what I call fundraising. I do is philanthropy. And they're two greatly different things. Selling tickets for a raffle is fundraising.
Okay.
Selling sponsorships to the stage at the Clinton County Fair for the Charlie Daniels concert, that's fundraising. I've done it. It's arranging a mutual convenience. So the company who's sponsoring, they're getting something out of it. Mm-hmm. They're getting the advertising.
Yep.
The fair has the money to do operate. So in my world, I look at it as, boy, I don't like fundraising. I'm not going to ask you for money. But philanthropy, on the other hand, should solve a problem for both parties. Mm-hmm. And that's really how I look. I'll give you an example of that. I won't name the names because it's a small town. One of my favorite stories. I was working with a retired physician. People may figure this out when they listen to it. Having coffee one day, this retired physician says, Stevie, he always called me Stevie. Stevie, boy, he said, my wife wants me to sell my airplane. I said, really? Yeah. And she wants to take the money and build an addition on the side of the house. He goes, Jesus, I'm 80 years old. What am I going to do? What do I want an addition? I said, well, why do you have an airplane at 80 years old? I said, when's the last time you flew it? He goes, 10 years ago. I said, so you must pay like hangar rent? Oh, yeah. $300 a month. I said, so you're paying $300 a month to house an airplane you haven't flown in 10 years.
Yeah, 40 grand tied up in.
Yeah. He goes, well, I won't fly anyway. It's broken. I said, okay, so now it's broken. You have a broken airplane. You haven't flown it in 10 years. You're paying $300 a month, and your wife wants you to sell it. Yeah. And you're mad because you don't want an addition on it. Yeah. I said, well, I have a solution for you. This was years ago. I said, why don't you donate the airplane to the Plattsburgh Aeronautical Institute that we were starting with CV Tech? Let these students now have an airplane they can work on. It may never fly, but they can take it apart. They can put it back together. They can learn how all the operating system. I said, then what we'll do is you'll stop paying $300 a month in rent. That goes right in your pocket. We'll give you a taxable donation, income gift form for your donation for the value of the airplane. And your wife doesn't get the addition on the house. God, I love that. He said, let's do it. So we solved the problem. He had a problem. Plattsburgh Aeronautical Institute in the early days was a partnership with Clinton and CV Tech. We had a problem. We didn't have airplanes to work on. So to me, philanthropy solves a problem. I'll give you another instance. There's a law that was passed, it's probably 10 years old now. Anybody who is 70 and a half and you own an IRA, you've saved your money your whole life, you put money, that's what you're told, you put money in an IRA. At 70 and a half, the IRS says you must take a minimum distribution out of that IRA. Now, if you do, what's going to happen? You're going to pay taxes on it. You don't want it. You don't need it. You're okay. I don't really want to touch that IRA, but I'm being forced at 70 and a half to take money out that I don't need and that I don't want, and it's going to trigger taxes. You got a problem on your hands. Well, guess what? They passed a law that said you may take up to $100,000 of that distribution and give it to any nonprofit or of your choice. And therefore, you avoid having to take the money and having to pay the taxes on it. And your nonprofit now gets the money tax-free. So we just solved two problems. Solved your problem by not having to pay the taxes on it. Helped your favorite nonprofit to do something that they couldn't otherwise do. So I can go on and on and on of examples of people who have a problem financially. And again, these aren't the working folks like you and I who don't have that problem. Doing some data back when I was at Paul Smith College, I never spoke to a donor, or most of them were all alumni, who graduated after 1973. Those are the youngest people I talked to. Everybody I worked with was graduating in the class of the 50s, the 60s, and the early 70s. Why?
They had money.
Well,
and also they were older.
They're at the point in their life. The kids are gone. The house is paid for. They play golf every day. They're getting it out of their system. They're starting to think about their legacy. They're starting to think about, what do I do? Okay, it just comes to you.
Yeah.
Well, they have a problem. How do I do this in such a way where I can avoid estate taxes? How can I structure my giving in such a way that will help me, but I still want to leave some money to my family? How do we structure different types of trust, different types of bequests, needing to work with partnering with a nonprofit? Again, fill in the blank. It could be the hospital. It could be American Lung Association. Could be anything. So what we do and what I think I'm pretty good at is working with folks like this. How do we solve your problem that's mutually beneficial? One of the biggest things I'm most proud of in my career is I've had the opportunity now on 4 occasions to host a donor panel of millionaires. I've done it in Rochester. I've done it all over. I've done it in Washington, D.C. I've done 4 of these around Long Island. Great time. So basically, imagine a panel of people, probably 5 or 6 people. Could be a couples, could be a single person. They are asked to come to this, usually it's at a conference, and they know that there's going to be a room full of fundraisers like me in the room. And we're going to ask you the questions we've always wanted to ask, but we're afraid to do it. And you're there because you have given at least in your lifetime $1 million away or more. So there's some ground rules. Mm-hmm. I'm the moderator on both these examples. And my favorite one, I was in Rochester. And one of the panelists was this cute little grandma, about 4'10". She was getting up there and spry. And we're asking the panel, how do you like to be approached? Do you like a phone call? Do you like an email? Do you like a glossy magazine? Do you like how do you like to be thanked? How do you like to be recognized? Just really, it was an open forum. How do you like to be treated, basically? She said something so profound. She said, look, I'm sure everybody in this room works for a great organization. You're doing great work and you got a great cause. If you were to approach me to make a gift to your organization, I'll give you $100, but that's it. And she says, why? Because you haven't found my hot spot. The hot spot in my heart is music and World War II airplanes. I'm thinking, okay, this is getting good.
Well, based on your
this is getting good. She says, music, because you don't know that I played this first clarinet in a symphony orchestra when she was in Philadelphia, I think.
As a younger person,
in the 40s. She was a professional musician. If you come to me with a request to have anything to do with music education, I'm an open checkbook. You just tell me and she's giving away millions. Mm-hmm. Because that's what I'm passionate about. And then someone said, what about the airplanes? And that was me. What about the airplanes? She goes, well, my husband was a fighter pilot in World War II, and he died. I want to leave his legacy and leave the whole legacy of pilots. You come to me with a museum or anything to do with historical restoration or anything to do with fighter planes, I'm an open checkbook. Everybody else, you're nice people. I'll give you $100. Basically, leave me alone. Hmm. So the key there is to find people who love what you do. And when I write my book, it's already written in my head. Chapter 1 is you follow the love, you find the money. And it's really simple. You need to find people who love what you do. So whether you raise money for cancer, you raise money for Alzheimer's, you raise money for your church, I raise money for education. And I raise money for people who cannot afford an education. And I don't apologize for that. So part of it is an attitude that I'm not going to apologize because I've seen what this money can do to change a person's life and a family's life. So therefore, if I find somebody who really supports a lot of other organizations, but education's not high on their list, fine, great. I'm not going to continue to follow up. I want to find someone whose life was changed by education and believe in education. Education is the key to getting out of poverty. Education is the key out of breaking the cycle of poverty. And again, I make no apologies for that. But I hate fundraising. I'll be the first to tell you. So I approach it I want to find people who have an interest in what I do and who I represent. And then a good fundraiser is a good storyteller. I don't ask for money. I just tell stories. And I'll tell you the story about just last week. I had a single mom with 2 kids whose power was turned off because she was behind on her light bill. Had to move into a motel with her 2 kids, lost all her food in her refrigerator, was about to have to quit school. But the faculty member overheard her talking to a friend, called me up, sent her down, left with a check in her hand, got her power turned back on, went to JCO, got some food replaced in her refrigerator. She's still in school. She's going to graduate.
Wow.
The student that comes in and says, my wife's on disability, I have a 2-year-old, my car's about to be repossessed. But I got good grades. These people are working so hard to make a difference in their life. So I have emergency funds that I give to students, people with childcare issues. So everything I do is to see these people graduate. My favorite day of the year is graduation, to watch these people go across that stage with the cap and the gown, who maybe never even finished high school. They have a GED. This is the proudest moment of their life. And for that, I make no apologies for asking people to support it.
Especially at Clinton, because you do, like you said, you see a lot of people older going back to school, have kids, or they're working and going to school. Yeah. Like that's so. So I mean, is it like when you talk about fundraise or say philanthropy or fundraise? I mean, is this something that you do? This is weekly or daily?
All the time.
Yeah. So this, I think you're having these conversations
all the time. It's a pipeline. I'd like to describe it as a pipeline.
Yeah, so it's sales.
It's the same thing.
Yep.
It's the same as your business.
Yep.
Someone can say, "Well, you're a used car salesman." If you want to think it that way, I don't. Mm-hmm. I think about you're changing somebody's life. I would most likely bet in your lifetime someone helped you. Someone helped you through a rough spot in a variety of ways. That's what I'm asking you to consider doing with these people. And it's not a big art. It's not a hard sale. It's not a big push if you're sitting across someone who gets it, who understands it and believes in it.
Yeah, and I think most people, like I could go through my life and think of things that I'm like, I think like that happened to me. I could like, I'll give a very easy example. If I drive by a kid having a lemonade stand, I will stop. Yeah. I typically won't get lemonade, but I will give them money. Boom. I just give them a donation.
Yep.
And the reason being, and I'll give you 2 examples. Number one, I love kids. I got 3 kids, but and the golf tournament is literally just for kids, for the kids, but it literally goes to children's charities. But I end up giving money to those kids because number one, I did that as a kid.
Yep.
I remember doing it. I remember. Say you get rejected, but people just don't want. You want lemonade? No, I'm good. I don't. I mean, when you're like 7, 8 doing that, like you're like, oh, okay, and then but you learn. And
you learn.
The other thing, so that's number one. That and I'll put like Girl Scout cookies. Yeah. Typically, Girl Scout cookies, same thing. I usually go up to the kid who's sitting there, or the 2. Usually there's 2 girls sitting there, or whatever, and get Girl Scout cookies. I'm like, cool. So I'll say, what's your recommendation? I really like the Thin Mints. I'm like, what's your recommendation? Like, I really like the Samoas. I'm like, cool. So then I buy one of this is what I do. I buy one of each, and then I give them both the box, the cookies. So that's like my. But my thing is, I'll be walking into Lowe's and they're sitting there, or walking into Target or whatever, and they're there. I'm stopping, because my thing is, and my other thing is, if I have a kid, not their parent, but if the kid comes knocking on my door and comes up and asks me anything for their school, I'm going to say this, and people are like, go to his house.
Yeah,
but if you're a kid that like comes and walks up and knocks on my door and says, we're selling XYZ for XYZ at our school.
Here's the cause.
What is it? And and it's not, it for me, it's twofold. Number one, that takes a lot of guts for a kid to go do that, because it's scary. I did it as a kid, and it's not fun. So I always look at it, I'm like, it's not that I'm giving the kid a freebie. It's kind of one where I'm like, keep doing this, keep going, because people will say yes to you. And I think it's the idea, me now having, I mean, at this point, I got 20-something years of rejections. It's just because I get rejected more when people say yes. Yeah. So I've built up a tolerance to it, but it still stings. I'm human. But it's also one where, when I see kids doing that, I'm like, I know that's not easy. And I know you'd rather be sitting at home on a Saturday playing video games and going out and raising money for your sports banquet or school trip or whatever. So, but a lot of it is, like you said, I see myself in them because that's what I did as a kid. So I have a soft spot for that. And, there's other things, I look at, like, we give money to the JCO backpack program.
Love it.
But for me, I couldn't even, luckily I didn't have, I always had food as a child. Me now looking at my own kids, I'm like, if my kids didn't have food, no fault to anybody, I would be heartbroken. Yeah. And for the backpack program, there's kids that don't have food. And it's not, and I'm sure if you ask their parents weren't like, we just didn't want to give them food. I'm sure their parents are struggling in some facet. It's not, so you look at it, it's like, I always go back to this. Life is the hardest thing you'll do. Like, life's hard. And there's awesome things about life, but life is hard. Life will, like, quote the old Rocky thing, like, life will punch you in the face, you know? It's like, and when and I think that organizations that, so like something like the backpack program, when I know that kids are getting food, especially young kids that they have no control, you know, I mean, which is I mean, again, I'm thinking about my kids right now, but it's heartbreaking that these kids, you know, some of these kids just unfortunately didn't get dealt the best hand. And, you know, so those are the ones that stick out. But again, like you just said, it ties back into me, where if you said, no offense, but if you're like, we're raising money for a pet organization. Anybody that knows me, I'm allergic to pets. Yeah. And I have this phobia basically with pets because I use this is the best way I can explain it. If I said, do you like bees? You're like, yeah, I like bees. I'm like, do you like getting stung by bees? Right. Like, no. That's what happens when I see a pet. So if someone came and said, we're raising money for pets, I'm like, wrong guy to ask. Because I literally, that is, and I'm sure it's a great organization, but I might give you a little bit of money, but I'm like, just.
So I didn't even ask you, and you just showed your cards. Every single person I ever meet, if someone I'm introduced to or trying to get to know them a little better, they will always, on their own, tell you what the hotspot is. Yours is kids.
Yeah.
And you also told me what it's not. It's pets. You just told me. I didn't have to ask.
Yeah.
And there's a saying in fundraising, you got one mouth and two ears. You better use it in proportion. And they will always, always tell you what it is. And if it does not align with my no harm, no foul. That's okay. We'll just go find somebody else who loves what you do.
So how do you open that line up with somebody? If you sit down, like, what's your opening line? Is like, just tell me what's important to you? That direct, or is it just kind of flows out?
Well, first of all, we try to do is, I've never made a cold call in my life, ever. It's someone that I know, someone I was told to go see as a referral, much like your business. Yep. I always tried, if I don't know them, I want to get as much information as possible. Now, again, I was very comfortable in Clinton County for all these years doing it because I know people's families. I know something about them. Mm-hmm. Going to Paul Smith's, and I'm being sent to Florida to meet with some alumni. I didn't even know what they look like. I was fortunate enough that I had a database manager who would give me a confidential profile. So I had their photo. I know when you graduated. I know what your degree was. I know what you give to, when you give. I know what other organizations you give to. I know that you have a house in Florida. You have a house in Sedona, Arizona. I know you got a boat registered in your name. It's a 45-foot sailboat. All public information. I already have a profile on who you are. That's cool. Yeah. I know what you like. I know what you don't like. I also get into the politics. I don't ever talk politics. But through these wealth engines, wealth screening software that we have, it's all public information. We do not know how much cash does Galen Trombley have in his pocket? How much does he have in his checkbook? How much do you have in your 401? I don't know. But if it's public, it just gathers all this public information, searches the DMV records, searches the property records, builds a profile. It searches all these other nonprofits. When they put out an annual report, I can say, oh, he gives to CVPH Foundation. Oh, he gives to the Strand. So all of a sudden, and you actually build a little pie chart. 60% of this person's donations goes to education. 30% goes to arts. 30%, I'm using my math, 20% goes to pets, whatever. It's being armed with some information when you go in there. And then simply it's a matter of people know what I represent, why I'm there for the most part. Again, I'm not going to any cold call, stranger off the street. Although, fun story, I was thinking about this coming over. For my job for Health Workforce New York, they sent me to a gala in New York City. Rooftop.
The Met Gala?
Yeah, it wasn't the Met Gala. It was pretty darn close. Rooftop gala in New York City. I don't know another human being. These are all doctors.
Were you wearing boat shoes?
No, I wasn't wearing boat shoes. I actually was fully dressed with a tie and a jacket. The challenge was, and the CEO, Richard, sent me down and he goes, we need to meet some of these people. We need to talk to them. So my job was to go in there and meet as many people as I can in this 3-hour gala event, come back with some business cards, follow up with appointments. I got 8 that night.
Wow.
People I don't even know. And that's just striking up conversations. You know, we're all here because of healthcare and healthcare training and career tracks on healthcare. Again, when you're with people with a similar interest, that's half the battle. And then it's just a matter of educating about what you do. So
how does breaking that down into, just because I want to say like quickly on like the actual fundraising.
Yeah.
So if you take out philanthropy and you're doing for the Clinton County Fair.
Yep.
So what is your angle on that? Because I think a lot of this, actually, I want to have you, I'm going to let you go. I don't want to say, I'm going to.
Well, again, you're using just those two examples. When you're selling sponsorships, that's not fundraising. That's not even philanthropy. That's ad sales.
Yeah.
We're going to put your banner on this stage for the week of the fair, and particularly for the Charlie Daniels concert. It's X amount of dollars. Are you in or not? So that's ad sales. I don't consider that fundraising at all. I've done phone-a-thons in the early days, believe it or not. We used to call people. Those are tough. Those are people. You may have experienced this, not as much anymore, but you're sitting down to dinner, the phone rings, and it's a student from Plattsburgh State calling you as part of the annual fund phone-a-thon. Has that happened to you?
Not recently.
Not recently. They're doing less and less of it because people are getting savvy. They got caller ID.
To be honest, I don't even know if I've ever had that.
Yeah, it's happened to me. And of course, you know, being kind of a smarty pants, I saw they're reading a script. Yeah, yep. Mr. Frederick, I see last year you gave X amount of dollars. Would you do that again for this year? So I'll tell you what, I'll double it this year if in 5 seconds you can tell me who the treasurer is of your alumni association. And she paused. She goes, "That wouldn't happen to be you, is it?" I said, "Oh, she's right. I had to double my gift."
Wow. So
the pledge form came in. My wife was like, "What did you do?" I said, "I lost a bet." So in a situation like that, I mean, yeah, that's kind of fundraising, you know. But it's harder to say no to a student. Like the example is you said when a kid comes to your house, when a current student, we still did phone-a-thon at Paul Smith's before I left. Current student calls you. You're calling an alum. If you talk to him a little bit, hey, I heard you graduated from the forestry program in 1975, and I could see you. We armed him. Mm-hmm. You got you're a surveyor. You have a hotel, and I'm going to school, and this is what I'm going for. And yeah, okay, we know. All right, we'll send you a check.
It is like this is my thought on most fundraising things. When people say fundraising, we're going to put your ad here and here. My radar, like my marketing radar, is just like this is a.
See, again, I would disagree with you because to me that's ad sales. Fundraising is you don't get anything in return other than So when I go back you can write it off on your taxes.
Yeah, when they say, hey, can you do a fundraiser? Can you spend? We're going to put your ad. We're going to put it on the website. We're going to put it in a brochure. We're going to put it on a T-shirt.
Yeah, and you got all this, and this at the gold, silver, bronze level. Yeah,
and my thing is, I always look at that. And my marketing, my logical side's like, no, because it doesn't make any sense.
Right. How many eyeballs are going to see my ad?
And I never look at it like that because at first I'm like, okay, listen, I'm looking at it more of like, what's the actual organization going to, which I know is what you're supposed to.
What's the cause?
That's kind of like the foot in the door. Like we'll put up, the poster at the concert. I'm like, well, I don't really care because nobody's watching it. But the idea behind it is what's the money going towards. So I always look. It's like if a kid comes and says, can you sponsor our after prom party? We sponsor multiple every year because they send it in, and I'm like, we spread it out, but like, hey, give them some money.
Limited number of eyeballs.
I said, it doesn't need to go anywhere. You're raising money. These kids are gonna have a good time. It's safe. Let's do it. So I always have I don't really do a lot of like our tournament, which is fundraising for the tournament. I think because it goes to, last handful of years, we sponsored like JCO, Literacy Volunteers, Ted K Center. We've done stuff with United Way. We've done
fantastic.
Like they're all organizations. The money stays local. It's all the money that we raise. So I know it's a good cause. We typically don't have a hard time raising money for it because we flat out just say, listen, like you're just donating and we're giving to all these causes to help kids, and we don't take any money. Like we're doing a lot of volunteer legwork to get this done. And it's not hard to get sponsorships. So it's really not a hard sell on people. It's just my thing is always like, I'm the guy to be like, listen, it's a great cause. I believe in it. But if you don't want to do it, please don't feel obligated.
There's another factor.
Okay.
It's the person asking. That's a huge influence. Who's asking me? So someone who likes you, respects you,
Yep.
knows you're honest, that counts for an extra 10 points in my book. I mean, that helps go a long ways. When but someone that you know and trust and respect says, hey, why don't you join me? I'm doing this because I believe in X, Y, Z, and this is what we're doing. Why don't you join me in supporting this?
Yep.
It's hard to say no. Now, a complete stranger, no.
Yeah.
So there is a huge factor about who is doing the ask. I love it when I've heard it for years. Hey, you're so enthusiastic about what you're doing. I said, yeah, it's genuine because I've seen it.
Yeah.
So when you're enthusiastic about it, the person you're sitting across from you have a level of mutual respect, even if you just met. You have a reputation of being transparent and honest. I mean, all that goes into the soup, that ends up in having somebody saying, yeah, I want to support you. I want to support your organization.
That's good. It's something I'm not good at. So I said,
like I said,
we got the pro on here.
I don't think anybody has ever come out of the womb and said, I'm going to be a fundraiser.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody goes to school for it. Nobody goes, I'm going to be a fundraiser. Really? No. Nobody does it. You fall into it because somebody approaches, hey, you got a great personality. Why don't you go out and raise millions of dollars? Well, where? Where do you go to get trained? There really is professional training, certifications. I mean, there's all sorts of different credentials you can get. It's a real thing, but nobody goes to school for it. Nobody thinks about it. It just kind of somehow evolves in your career.
No, it's good. I love it. See, I'm learning new stuff here. So, back to Clinton community. Talk about so this obviously was headlines. You hear the college is shutting down, blah blah blah. It's all,
we'll back that one up.
Well,
college is moving,
not
shutting down.
But I'm saying this is stuff you saw. It was like college is closing down.
Yeah, people.
And I knew they're saying it moving to Plattsburgh, but the idea. But again, you go on.
How do people read it? How do people interpret it?
Well, it's the headlines, and then someone misreads it, and it's like, wait, they're moving. Like
I had to call out several people who publicly said, "Oh, you're closing." No, we're not closing.
So speak about it. I guess from a reliable source here. Give us the actual, the details that you can say right now.
Sure. Yeah. What I can tell you is, we opened our doors in 1969. First graduating class was 1971 with 33 students. Fast forward, I just did this research. In 1999, we graduated 294 students in that graduating class. It got to the point in 2008, 2009, if you remember, that was a big recession that happened.
That was when I graduated.
Right. Yep. When there's a recession and people lose their jobs, they come back to school. They go back to be retrained, and they choose community colleges. Our enrollment at that point was 1,800 full-time, it's called an FTE, full-time equivalent. Basically, it's 1,850 students on that campus. I remember that. They were parking on the grass. There was not even enough physical places to park in the parking lots. We were beyond capacity. Since that time, it looks like the downhill slope of Whiteface Mountain. We're now down to 525 students, FTE.
Wow.
525 students does not pay the bills.
How many are on campus?
I'm so glad you asked that. Of the 525, about 150 of those are in the high schools taking CAP classes.
Wow.
So when you look at the number of students physically on campus, we're talking about 350 students. There's days when I drive on.
But I'm saying actually staying like a room and board kind of thing.
No, we don't have any residence halls.
So that's gone now.
No, we don't have any residence halls. So just how many are driving up the hill or taking an online class? We're down to 3. I mean, in the old days when we had the 1,800 students, we had the crappy rundown campus. Over the years, we've put, my guesstimate, $40 million into campus.
Wow.
The campus has never looked this good. It's beautiful, remodeled, beautiful. So now we got a beautiful campus and no students. Now there's a whole reason why, and it's not just a Clinton Community College problem. Student in college in the Northeast, we can go into a whole bunch of reasons why people are not seeing the value of a college. They'd rather go out and work. Starting jobs and starting salaries have jumped quite a bit. So there's a whole lot of reasons for that. But the reality is 525 students does not pay our bills. So we've got the SUNY, our main organization, has been looking at us saying, hey, what are you going to do? You need to do something quick and radical because that doesn't pay the bills. Middle States is our accrediting agency. Every college in this area in the Northeast is accredited by Middle States. Middle States came and they come every 10 years. It's a complete evaluation. There's 7 standards that they really grill you on. They came back and said, for fiscal responsibility, you're not viable. You cannot sustain yourself at 525 students. What are you going to do that's radical that you're going to change and move the dial? So, for example, Middle States just was, if you're paying attention down in Albany, the College of St. Rose, where my youngest daughter just...
Like that close.
Yeah. She just graduated 2 years ago, and they were told by Middle States, you must do a teach out. You're done. Find a plan to get the last year students out of there. So they're looking at Clinton Community College, and then they haven't said that yet. We're on warning saying, hey, you need to do something. SUNY says you got to do something. It's almost like a classic pincer movement in a World War II movie coming at you from both sides. So I was not part of the discussion, but there was an idea floated. Nobody said you must do this, but somebody in a discussion, a small group of people said, hey, boy, our sister school 4 miles up the road has some room. They got some capacity. Why don't you guys move on to the same campus together? And we did some number crunching, and it looks like just in our physical plant, our electricity and our heating bills and the cost to maintain our buildings, that would save us $1 million a year right off the bat. That's huge. So when the announcement came out, it was a gut punch. I mean, I've given over 20 years of my life in that place. So a lot of people have. It was a gut punch, very emotional. I mean, this is our beautiful historic campus, the former Hotel Champlain. We've been good stewards. And once you get over what's the 7 stages of grief or whatever it is, you're angry, you're mad, you're sad. Once you sit down and get over that, and it took me 3 days to calm down, to think about it, and you think, there may be an opportunity here. Currently, because we're so small, we no longer offer food service. There's not a restaurant or a cafeteria or anybody who's willing to come up and set up shop for 300 people. Not going to do it. So we have students who don't drive, don't have a car, get dropped off.
And the closest place to eat there, you have to drive to it.
You got to go to Stewart's.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
You get dropped off and you don't have a car, your choice for lunch is Snickers or Milky Way out of the vending machine. Yeah. We no longer have a bookstore. We don't have a physical bookstore. So if you want to order your in the old days when you and I went to college, well, me, not you, but you go and you got your schedule and your class number and you pick out your books and you pay for your books. Or right now it's almost like an Amazon. You go online, you order your books, you get shipped to your house. So we don't have a physical store. So you can't even go in and buy a frozen Hot Pocket and throw that in the microwave for lunch. There's nothing. There's also, you can't buy a hat or a T-shirt or any kind of swag. This is Clinton Community College. So that's not really good for our students. We have a beautiful library. It's called the Learning Commons. One of my first campaigns for the college, I raised almost $3 million to build that. Beautiful tutoring center, library, great tutors and people in there. We're open Monday through Friday, 8 till 4. Well, when do students study? Nights and weekends. We're not open. You take housing. So some students who are not from Clinton County, we got quite a few, they don't want to drive even from Chateauguay every day. We no longer have housing. We did. We had 2 residence halls on the former Plattsburgh Air Force Base. MHAB is now. But thank God, Michael Carpenter, if you're listening, thank you for what you did. And also thank you for what you did for the community by opening up MHAB. Yeah. We got out of the residence hall business. Thank goodness that we did. It was good for a while, but during that downhill slide after 2008 and 2009, like any business, we knew we had to have X number of heads and beds to break even. Yep. We fell far below that, so we were just hemorrhaging cash. But we have students now who live in Broad Street Commons or Renaissance Village, or they don't have a car. We actually bought a couple vans and hired shuttle bus drivers. We go and pick them up and bring them back. Because, again, it's too far to walk. So the advantage of getting onto the Plattsburgh campus, if you could walk, depending on where your apartment is, that would be really cool. Hopefully you'll have access to more student services than we currently offer. The interesting thing is, I've talked to many of my donors, alumni, and not a single one of them is mad or upset. They're like, as long as you stay open, as long as there's still a community college in Clinton County where students can turn to, it really doesn't matter whether you're located at 136 Clinton Point Drive or 101 Broad Street. So that's very reassuring to me. But it is a gut check. A lot of the alumni especially are very emotional. They're like, oh my God, our beautiful school. I said, look at me in the eye and tell me if the reason you came to Clinton Community College was because of the view. The answer is always no. They didn't come because of the view. So our mission's not going to change. The mission of my job and the foundation of raising money is to help people get that education. It doesn't change. It doesn't matter to me where they sit. I think we're going to be able to offer more services to our students. The ones who graduate from us and decide they want to go on, 95% of those students go to Plattsburgh. Well, that's great. If you're already on the campus, you're already there. So I know you got a couple of questions, Perkin, but from my perspective, I think, emotions aside, this is a good move for our students. I think it's a good move for both campuses. I want to start coining the term better together. I think we are going to be better together.
So, my first question is, so on Plattsburgh, where are the classrooms, or they're using the same classroom? So it's like you would go into let's say, you have the business community and you have Ausable. Let's say you go into Ausable and you're in the computer lab thing in Ausable. Is 10 o'clock is Plattsburgh, 11 o'clock is Clinton?
No, that's a great question. And I can tell you right now, we have millions of questions and not a lot of answers because it's still relatively. The plan is to identify a building or two, to renovate them to be exclusively Clinton Community College. Our goal is to have a building or two on campus that's branded. It's remodeled, so it's modern. It's branded on the outside, so when you pull up, you're going to say Clinton Community College. You're going to pull in a parking lot with parking signs that says Clinton Community College. We'll be renting the facilities from Plattsburgh, but we wanted to make it very clear that you are at our facilities at Clinton at our buildings says Clinton Community College. Okay. Now, there's a million questions. Can we share classrooms? Well, we're exploring that right now. We're trying to figure out how many square feet of actual classroom space do we have now on Clinton's campus do we need over there? There's very smart people working on that task. There's very smart people working on IT. Imagine IT infrastructure. We have a database, our mainframe system that has all our student records. It's different than Plattsburgh's. Theirs is called Banner. Ours is called CAMS. They're night and day difference. They need to talk to each other when we get over there. So we need to upgrade to go to. So there's a lot of work to do. So that behind the scenes, other than having a brand new sign on a remodel building, there is a ton of logistics we've got to figure out how to make this happen. And it's never been done before in the state of New York. We are the first. It's happened in Colorado. There's a school out in Seattle. There's one in Pennsylvania. It's happening a few places around the country. We will be the first ones in the state of New York to do this. So there's no game plan.
But like shared services, dining halls. I'm assuming all this kind of gets pulled in.
Yep.
You look at, I think town and city of Plattsburgh have had these talks too. It's like it makes, again, we're kind of a limited resource lean area. To me, the idea of shared services goes a long ways. Yeah. Like you just mentioned, just purely the utilities, like heating. Yeah. It's easier to heat and light one dining hall than it is to have one that's like, if you're in Clinton and there's 10 kids in it, you're still using the same power.
Right, 100%. You're absolutely right. Now, so that's the low-hanging fruit we're looking at. It's just in terms of the utility costs and the facility maintenance cost is about $1 million is what we're hearing.
And when's the start date for this? Is it?
Oh, so the goal,
I guess that's the one thing
that's a great question. Our goal is we want to start the fall semester of 2025 over there. So that's about 18 months,
so?
and so that's a heavy amount of lifting.
Has that? Well, I forgot the middle state or whatever you called it.
Middle states.
So has they given you a time frame and when that? Like, is that?
They are here next week for a follow-up visit. They have a ton of questions.
So fall of 2025 is not actually an official start date. That's kind of like what you hope.
No, we need to be there fall of 2025.
Okay, so there is like an ultimatum like that. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, the ultimatum's not coming from middle states. The ultimatum's coming from our checkbook. Yeah. How much money do we have to operate at $1 million? Again, just for facilities costs. We're going to be out of money if we go past fall of 2025. So we really need to be there.
Does that change the philanthropic ask of people when it's like, hey, Clinton, but it's not this campus that we see here?
I was concerned about that, but everyone I've talked to so far, not at all. There's not a single person who said that's a bad idea. Just the opposite. Everybody said, it's pretty proactive of you to do that. It's pretty smart. Right. We see the savings, and as long as you don't deviate from your mission. Your mission is to provide an education and an open enrollment affordably at a community college in Clinton County, so that's not going to change.
So my initial off-the-cuff view of it, I think it makes a lot of sense for the just shared services alone. And I also think because it's going to – I think it's again, I'm not part of this. I feel like it would be an easier sell to tell someone that you're going to the Plattsburgh campus location than the view at Clinton is amazing, but it is out of the way.
And the other challenge is, unlike Plattsburgh State, you can drive through their campus. I cut through their campus when I go to Walmart.
Yep.
Clinton Community College, you got to have a reason to turn off of Route 9 and to go up that hill. You got to have a reason for going. I mean, it is open, but you don't just accidentally drive through it. So that's the way it's always been. But I think that there's so many positive outcomes. And I think if you look at it strictly through the lens of the student, it's going to be a much better experience for the student. We'll let the number crunchers work out the numbers, but even at the first pass, we're looking at a significant savings for the college. We may never, ever go back to 1,800 students. I don't ever see that in my lifetime. I think maybe for us is the 6, 7, maybe 800 range FTE. We'll never get back to 1,800. So, but we've got to be okay at 5, 6, 700 FTE and still pay our bills and still put some money aside for deferred maintenance and everything else and be fiscally responsible.
I think even in the future, beyond the merger of the geographical location, like even if you saw the merger of the two schools where and again, there's probably some diehards. I would even.
I'm so glad you brought the M word. I'm going to cut you off right there, because this is probably the biggest rumor I've heard in the community from some very in the know leaders. The two schools cannot merge. And I'm so glad you said that. And the reason they cannot merge is by state law. Only community colleges and ag and tech schools can offer associate degrees. Plattsburgh State is a comprehensive four-year school. It does not fit into that category.
Gotcha.
So Plattsburgh we cannot merge. They cannot. Only community colleges, and Canton, for example, because they started out as an ag and tech, can now offer bachelors. Only Clinton Community College, in this case, can offer. So we'll close before we merge. So merger is absolute, and that's something that's probably the biggest misnomer. And people use, you're just going to be absorbed by Plattsburgh a few years down the road. Are you going to merge? No, we can't. By law, we cannot do that. So,
glad you mentioned that. Now, the other thing is the actual campus. Is the campus owned by Clinton Community or by Clinton County?
Clinton County.
Okay. So there's obviously...
That's the other big... What are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
I don't know. The county has always owned the property.
I thought so, but I just didn't...
We'll get into the history. I can tell you some historical background behind that. But no, the Clinton County purchased the property in September of 1971 for $1,130,000. Quote me on that.
Okay.
County owns it. County owns the buildings. County owns the property. County will then, therefore, they're not pushing us out, but after we move, my understanding is they're going to conduct a feasibility study, get some experts in here. What is the best use for that property? They're going to work through the IDA, Clinton County IDA, with my friend Molly Ryan. And Molly's going to be responsible to say, okay, what's the best use? IAM aside, it's a different story. You can't see the Institute for Advanced Manufacturing. Let's put a bookmark on that.
I was going to say, I was kind of trying to get a view here.
Yeah.
But this is, so what, actually, Steve, quickly, what are we, people can't see this, but what are we looking at here?
So what you're looking at, the first thing to pick out is the former Hotel Champlain. It's a very iconic building. This one here was built in 1911 after the big fire of 1910 of the original building. That's kind of like our symbolic building. To the right of the picture is our Stafford Arts and Science building.
This is where the theater is, right?
Correct.
Okay, because I've been in there for plenty.
Yep. And then the other big one is the Florence Gymnasium. And to the right outside of your screen here is the Institute for Advanced Manufacturing that we built and cut the ribbon in 2017.
What's that little one?
That was the child care center. That little white cottage was for many, many years a child care center.
Okay.
Right out of the picture frame, you can't see, is my beloved alumni cottage, which we renovated with volunteers and donated material over the years.
I was going to say, I would just, that
right
might
here,
be a better view.
Right there. There's the IAM.
Oh, sorry.
Yep. If you click on that, you'll see where the Institute for Advanced Manufacturing is located.
Where'd that photo go?
I don't know. You just...
Oh, here, I'll zoom in this one. I thought it was going to be able to pop it right up for us, but...
Yep, there it is.
So this one... Oh, okay.
Actually,
got you
no,
right here.
that's a facilities building. You're still a little bit out of... Right here. You can see it right in that...
I was going to say, it's more modern looking.
It is.
Gotcha. Okay,
Yep.
there we are. Yep.
Yep, that's it. Whole story. I can go on for 2 hours just about that building. That building was born over bacon and eggs at Gus's Red Hots one morning for breakfast. Paul Grasso was the director of the Development Corporation.
Yep.
And I were having our regular monthly...
Paul's a big breakfast guy.
Oh, yes, he is. And he holds court. He used to hold court at Gus's.
Because that's actually how I met Paul.
Yeah.
I was at a breakfast.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he said to me one morning, I have an idea. It was his idea. He goes, I want to do a feasibility study. It's going to cost $30,000. He goes, I'm in for half through the TDC. Would the Clinton Community College Foundation go in for the other half? I said, yes. So we hired a group out of the University of Vermont, did the feasibility study. There's a good shot of the IAM up there too. Different angle. Right here. Yep. And, it was all positive. At the same time, SUNY put out what's called a SUNY 2020 grant. They put $50 million on the table and told all 64 campuses, here you go. Give us your best ideas. So the timing was perfect. We submitted a grant application based off our feasibility study. I was on the team that helped write that grant. And we waited and we waited and we waited. And if you ever had experience writing grants, you rarely get what you ask for. When we finally got word we got the full $12.7 million to build the Institute for Advanced Manufacturing. So before we even stuck a shovel in the ground, I jumped on an airplane with 2 colleagues. And we started traveling around the country, looking at other facilities and asking them, hey, what would you do differently? We learned a lot. We ended up in the headquarters, the national headquarters in Kenosha, Wisconsin, for Snap-on Tools. Okay. Became a great partner. I mean, we went to we toured the facility. We gave them copies of our blueprints, and they said, hey, this is great, but you have a major problem. So what's that? I said, you forgot storage. You have no storage for your tools in this building. It's like building a house with no closets.
Yeah.
We were so excited. You forgot the closets. They actually helped redesign the blueprints through their team. And that night, sitting in a little Italian restaurant with the president and CEO of Snap-on, all the regional VPs, and myself and my colleagues, and the little guy running around with a violin, playing the Italian music, shook hands and came out with an incredible working relationship with Snap-on Tools. You see them everywhere throughout the building. So the ribbon was cut in 2017. We built the building. About $10 million went to the construction, the infrastructure, the utilities, the putting up the building. Left us with $2.7 million to start buying some of these trainers that you see, all the hands-on milling machines and welding machines and 3D printers. And so from 2017, 2018, 2019, we were busy. The whole business plan for this building really focused on two pillars. Number one, were students coming out of high school who want to earn a degree in fill in the blank. Mechanical technology, electrical technology, mechatronics. Basically, it was an associate's degree, 2 years, and you did all your training in the IAM. The other pillar was based on the current workforce that are working within our manufacturing facilities. Basically, they're incumbent employees who they want to upskill. We brought them in to do this job, but if we provide them with some specialized training, they can be promoted and get a raise and go on to do this job. So we were very busy in 2017, 2018, 2019. We had, you could see students in and out every day working on projects. You could see the classes. You could see the employers were in there. Nova Bus, for example, backed in a frame called the skeleton bus, training employees how to do all the wire harnessing, all this stuff on a bus. It was amazing.
Oh, yeah.
So it was a beehive of activity. December of 2019, I left to go on my sabbatical at Paul Smith College. That was in December of 2019. We all know what happened in March of 2020. Pandemic hits, world shuts down. While I was gone, a lot of the faculty, full-time faculty who taught there retired. We hired them out of the military. So they had 20 years in the military service. They needed 10 more years at Clinton Community College to get a retirement. So they retired. What happened was they weren't quickly replaced. And I think over the time, we did not replace, we took our eye off the ball. Weren't actively recruiting, didn't have the faculty there to teach them if we did. We weren't actively pushing for training. A lot of the employers told us, hey, look, we're hiring now, but we're hiring in 2s and 3s, not 20s and 25s. 2s and 3s, we can train them in-house. We really don't need to send them there. So really, it happened to be just the building just really was not being utilized. It is not being utilized. So now with this announcement that we're relocating the campus, the IAM, obviously, we can't pick it up and move it.
Yeah.
Because that was funded with state money, there's a commitment from the chancellor, from the SUNY, from the governor that will remain a training facility for manufacturing.
So it'll just be an off-campus?
No, it's going to be, it'll still be its own facility, but it won't be managed by Clinton Community College. We're looking at it being managed, and it's still very early, by some kind of a consortium.
Okay.
Led by the Chamber of Commerce and, maybe working with CV Tech and maybe working with some other organizations.
So I'm assuming most people that would go through this would be local.
Yeah. Yep.
Versus people like traveling up to go live in Plattsburgh to go to this place.
Yeah. Mostly, again, going back to that same model, are these students who want a degree or are they people who want to be trained? And we're finding out a lot of the employers don't need to have the degree. They're not requiring the degree. So the bottom line is, again, a lot of questions. We're just getting started, but the facility will stay open. For example, we're doing welding training right now. The Chamber of Commerce led and helped write a grant through the Northern Borders Commission, some other money that came in. We're offering 4 classes of welding training. And what's cool about this, only 3 weeks. So if you want to enroll, it's 3 weeks out of your life. You're going to spend 1 week in the classroom and 2 weeks hands-on learning. We can only take 12 because there's only 12 welding booths. So we've already taught 2 classes. Both times it had over 150 applicants for the 12 spots. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
If you get chosen, you're paid a stipend. You're actually going to get paid to go. Your travel expenses, childcare expenses, all your PPE, your personal protective equipment, your welding helmet, your welding gloves. That could be another $300 or $400 paid for through the grant. The first 2 classes we had, all the students graduated, all of them completed the training on a Friday, and they had a job on Monday. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's a great model. Did they go to school for 2 years? No. Did they go to school even for a semester? No, they went for 3 weeks. When they know enough how to weld, not to hurt themselves. They know the basics. When they get placed with the employer, they're going to train them exactly. How does Alstrom want them to weld a rail car? How does Jefford Steel want them to weld at Jefford Steel? But they know the basics.
Yeah.
That's a cool model. So the 3rd class is going to be coming up really soon, be the 3rd cohort coming through. and we got funding for one more. Okay, well, let's take that model. Maybe we can do the same thing for HVAC. Every building in the North Country requires heat. Mm-hmm. Many of them have air conditioning, and the same shortage of heating and air conditioning techs. So maybe we'll use that model. So there's a really bright future for the IAM, I guess is where I'm going with this. A lot of details we still got to fill out, but that will still operate, that will not be for sale like the rest of the campus, that the county's going to end up doing.
So, Steve, we got good news and we got bad news.
I think I'm looking at the clock. Like, we are not going to get to discuss World War II fighter pilots. Or Hotel Champlain history.
I have not a ton of questions lined up, but they were like questions I wanted to ask you. So
I warned you about this.
One, for the sake of time, because I got to go watch my daughter do some hip hop dancing here. I want you to come back on.
Love it.
Because one, I usually say the boring stuff because we talk about work, but I do there's a lot of jobs and interesting careers. I just want to ask questions. Yeah. This is so new. This is one of them. Like I said, I learned a ton here. But I do want to get into the history stuff because you have stuff on here that I'm like, I don't know who those people are. I know a couple of them, not all of them. But what I want to do, so bad news is we got to wrap it up. Good news is I do want you to come back on possibly later this year.
Yeah, and hopefully I'll have a lot more questions regarding the relocation. Hopefully we'll have some answers by then.
I have a lot of follow-up on this.
Yeah. I can talk.
The IAM, I was going to say AIM. I'm used to the old school of chat messaging. IAM. I want to ask more questions on that next time you come on. But again, if I can have you back on, we will do so.
Be happy to return.
Okay. Like you said, mentioned Father Ted. Father Ted said the same thing, and he was.
You need to follow up with Father Ted. You were just starting to scratch the surface with him.
That's what I told him. I was like, 2 hours was not. He was very good. He said he would come back on. So we're gonna wrap it up there. But I am excited on the direction of Clinton Community College. And again, this is from a pure outside. I have no inside knowledge about any of this, but I think it's a good opportunity. And it, like you said, the option of closing or the option of merging is a way better option.
No merge.
But I mean, not merge.
Move. There we go. Yeah,
wrong
yeah. Remember, we did wrong M
so
word.
Instead of the big C, we want to have the big M. So we're just going to move over.
We're going to
the big M, they used to call
momentum. Let's change it to R. We're going to relocate.
I like that.
Not merge.
I like that. So, so we'll have Steve back on. I think as Clinton Community College kind of unveils, the new, the new path going forward, or whatever that newness looks like. Yep. But yeah, I do want to ask a lot because I think the idea of the trades, I think the idea of training people, I think of the idea of pulling kids, or say kids, just local residents, and giving them more specialized training for jobs here. Because, I promise we're going to stop. But the manufacturing cluster, quote Gary Douglas, a lot of this stuff, when you start to see, it's just like a flywheel of activity that's going to start happening, or is happening, but I think can continue to happen. So, okay, I'm going to stop there. We're going to wrap up there, episode 261, the Gail and Trombley Show. Actually, do you want to plug anything before I sign off, Steve, or are you good?
I'm good. I mean, we can go on a lot of before we get wound up and go down another rabbit hole.
I usually give someone a chance to plug, but we'll have you back on. So Steve will come back on. He'll have a plug at that point for something. Yeah. We'll have
guaranteed.
But we'll wrap it up there. Episode 261. Steve, thank you very much. We're out. Thank you for listening to the Galen Trombley Show. Be sure to subscribe, review, and share the episode. You can follow me on all social platforms at Galen Trombley. Thanks for listening.